Chapter 1. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go? This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. As the sun set in the west, it became a bit less blazing. Warm light shrouded the medicine garden, and the fragrant spirit plants wantonly stretched out. Yu lowered his head and tightened the iron wire around the fence. After confirming that it wouldn't fall off, he stood up and violently coughed. His pale cheeks flushed red. The setting sun shone through the youth's scattered hair, and half his face was covered in shadow. His body was thin, and his face couldn't be considered handsome. There were even a few faint spots on his face, but looking at him made one feel inexplicably close. It was because of this that when the wild boar broke into the medicine garden half a year ago, the medicine garden manager had become soft-hearted and allowed Yu to escape the tragic fate of being hung up and beaten to death. But after he was injured, he didn't receive timely treatment. Although that boy Potato had taken care of him, he still caught a cold and coughed all day long. His complexion was paler than normal, and he was often maliciously called a tuberculosis ghost. At this time, Yu smiled and turned around, his expression indifferent. He was an orphan, and from a young age he understood the truth of the fist. If he could endure, he wouldn't stir up trouble. After tidying up his belongings, Yu lowered his head and began to clean up the blue stones on the ground. This type of stone was the most famous item of the Eastern Mountain sect. It was hard and of excellent quality. Many sects favored it and purchased it to build their sect gates. It could be considered a pillar product of the Eastern Mountain sect, and they earned a great deal of spirit stones. Of course, there was no destiny for an outer court disciple like Yu to obtain such a high-level cultivation item. Most of them entered the pockets of the sect master and elders, and a small portion was distributed to the sect's true disciples. The entire wealth that the Eastern Mountain sect had accumulated over 7 years couldn't even afford a single blue stone beneath his feet, right? Yu felt a bit bitter and immediately pressed down. He was well aware of his own talent. Since he was destined to be mediocre, he shouldn't have any thoughts that he shouldn't have. Time was up. Yu put away the shovel and began to carefully clean it. Because he was responsible for the blue stone road near the medicine garden, there were often pollen, flower petals, and fallen leaves that were swept up by the wind. Thus, the tip of the shovel was mixed with a bit of refined iron used to refine magic tools. Although it was only the size of a grain of rice, its sharpness had risen by several levels. Potato joked that this was the most valuable item on Yu's body and could be considered a 9th-grade magic tool. Although this item essentially belonged to the Eastern Mountain sect, he only had the right to use it and didn't own it. "This brat, his mouth is really stinky." Yu cursed, the corners of his lips curling up. Suddenly, a burst of laughter came from afar. No matter how much he tried to appear carefree, he couldn't hide the savagery in his voice. Third senior apprentice brother's talent defies the will of the heavens. He broke through 7 boundaries in 27 days and reached Foundation establishment. This is an unprecedented record since the founding of my Eastern Mountain sect. Foundation, senior apprentice, senior apprentice, senior apprentice, way, senior apprentice, brother way. There is I has and has sect. Junior, I sect as you. Senior apprentice. Senior way he is. What he? He. Sunday Chun, he ant. And, amidst the crowd, the one with the loudest and most brilliant laughter was the 3rd senior brother. On his left and right were a few young women who were smiling and exhaling fragrances. As they walked, their bodies would come into contact with each other intentionally or unintentionally. Coupled with their admiring gazes, it made one feel even more elated. Yu was in a trance. 3rd senior apprentice, Brother Wei's birthplace was unknown. He boasted that his ancestor was a royal officer and had a peak golden core cultivation. From the day he was judged to have talent in cultivation, his family changed his name in hopes that one day he could revive the prestige of his family and achieve the achievements of his ancestor. Before this, everyone only thought of this as a joke. Third senior apprentice, Brother Wei Wei's name, had an imposing aura, but he wasn't handsome at all. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that he had a sharp mouth and cheeks like a monkey. Moreover, he was calculative and liked to take advantage of others. Compared to the majestic royal officer that could uproot mountains and rivers, he simply couldn't be compared. But 2 months ago, third senior apprentice Brother began to personally perform. This chapter isn't finished. Please turn to the next page. In 27 days, he broke through the 7 realms of energy refining and reached foundation establishment in one fell swoop. Afterwards, he bravely advanced like a hot knife through butter. It was said that he had reached the 3rd realm of foundation establishment the day before yesterday, let alone the tiny Eastern Mountain sect. Even if this cultivation speed was placed in a large immortal Dao sect, it would be at the top. On the day that third senior apprentice Brother reached foundation establishment, the sect master wept and prayed to the ancestral master through the night. The next day, he formally accepted third senior apprentice Brother as a disciple. Like this, third senior apprentice Brother's fate was completely reversed. In an instant, he had become a true disciple of the sect master. On that day, the nearly 1,000 outer court disciples of the Eastern Mountain sect all turned into red-eyed rabbits. Now, third senior apprentice Brother had become the future star of the sect. His limelight was so great that it suppressed all the true disciples of the sect, and he became increasingly arrogant. Junior apprentice brothers, junior apprentice sisters, you praise me too much. I have just entered the gate of cultivation, and I must guard against arrogance and rashness. None of you can harm me. Wei Wei's face was filled with modesty, attracting a flurry of flattery. For instance, Senior Apprentice Brother is too modest. We are sincere. Senior Apprentice Brother's heart is like a boulder. How can we possibly shake it? And so forth. As they walked along the stone path, third Senior Apprentice Brother's eyes seemed to pause on Chinyu for a moment. But soon he looked away, his expression indifferent. The two of them were no longer on the same level, and it was destined that they would never cross paths again in the future. So what if they knew each other before? As the laughter faded away, Chinyu could faintly hear some coquettish grumbling. It seemed that third Senior Apprentice Brother had flirted with several young girls, drawing several punches from them. Chinyu calmly stood up. He glanced in that direction and then turned to walk away. Beneath the setting sun, the youth's back was as thin as a bamboo. After finishing his work, he didn't return to his residence. Instead, he turned several crossroads and walked along the hillside until he arrived at a remote valley. This place was lush with vegetation, and there were few people here. But Chinyu took several deep breaths. He narrowed his eyes and soon found a hoof print on the ground. Looking at the degree of depression in the soil, it was a large fellow. He squatted down and carefully looked at the missing corner of the hoof print. He smiled. "I've finally found you. This wild boar that appeared in this valley was the one that had rushed into the medicine garden half a year ago and nearly killed him." Chinyu had paid attention to it for a long time and had finally discovered its whereabouts several days ago. He didn't enter the valley. Instead, he stood on his tiptoes and looked at the large trees in the valley. After making sure that the trap was intact, he turned and left. The spiritual strength around the sect was relatively rich, so these wild boars were very clever and sensitive to smells. He didn't want to fail at the last moment. To deal with this wild boar, he definitely wanted revenge, but that wasn't the only reason. Chinyu had heard that this wild boar with a missing corner on its left hoof had repeatedly entered the medicine garden over the years. It had eaten many spirit grasses, and its flesh and blood contained a massive amount of spiritual strength. What he wanted was this spiritual strength. If he could capture this wild boar and eat its flesh and blood, he might be able to cure his old illness. Without further delay, he returned to his residence. As usual, he ran into several groups of people and was ridiculed. Chinyu lowered his head and bitterly smiled. It wasn't until he entered his courtyard that his complexion returned to normal. After a simple wash, Chinyu began to eat. He chewed carefully, slowly swallowing the food with water. He was well aware of his body's condition. It hadn't improved, and his coughing and chest tightness had gradually worsened. In the last several days, when he woke up in the morning, his phlegm was even tinged with blood. There was a great fear in the youth's heart. He forced himself not to think about it and only ate as much as he could. After he finished eating, he cleaned up the dishes and quietly rested for a while. Once his heart had completely calmed down, he began to cultivate. That's right, outer court disciples could also cultivate. After all, in order to join an immortal cultivation sect, the premise was that they had a certain level of cultivation talent. The Eastern Mountain sect's outer court disciples were all issued 3 pages of the true wood arts. Even a complete cultivation rookie like Chinyu knew that the true wood arts was incomplete and of a rotten grade. This chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page. It was frightening. It was completely inferior. But besides this, there was no other choice. Chinyu understood this, so he never complained. After 7 years of diligent cultivation, he barely managed to reach the 2nd level of energy refining. As he revolved his cultivation method, he could feel a faint, cool aura circulating within his body, bringing with it a bit of comfort. 2 hours later, Chinyu opened his eyes, a bit of disappointment in them. He could feel that every time he cultivated, the heaviness in his chest would dissipate a little. But the magic power of the 2nd level of energy refining was far too weak. It wasn't enough to completely eradicate the hidden dangers in his body. Moreover, every time magic power circulated through his chest, it would be consumed. Although it wasn't much, it still surpassed the speed at which Chinyu could replenish it. Now, his cultivation of the 2nd level of energy, refining, was teetering on the verge of collapse. Once his cultivation regressed, and he relied on the magic power of the 1st level of energy refining, he feared his illness would immediately erupt. Thus, Chinyu only dared to cultivate for 2 hours a day. He stood up and stretched his body. Then he pushed open the door and began to slowly run along a remote path. This method was a considerable challenge to Chinyu's tired body, but it could help his blood flow, so he clenched his teeth and persisted. Hoo! His heavy breathing was like a worn-out bellows. On the youth's pale face, 2 spots of red began to appear. An hour later, Chinyu came to a stop. His body swayed, and his ears began to ring once more. He struggled to stand up straight, closed his eyes, and adjusted his breathing. After his heartbeat calmed down a little, he turned around and walked back the way he came. If he ran for an hour, he would need at least double the time to walk back. Often, it would be dark by the time he arrived at his residence. Today was no exception. Chinyu dragged his body. Just as he was about to leave the remote path, he paused, a look of surprise on his face. When he was a child, he discovered that his 5 senses far surpassed those of ordinary people. His hearing and eyesight were especially sharp. At this time, the night wind gently rippled, bringing with it a faint sound. If one listened carefully, it seemed to be coming from behind a steep slope. Not too far away from the steep slope was the valley where the wild boar appeared. Had the trap been activated? Chinyu was overjoyed. He didn't know where the strength came from, but he turned and rushed up the slope. The heaven and earth spiritual strength that the Eastern Mountain sect was located in was relatively rich. The weeds that grew here had greatly changed over the years. For instance, this vine was common to begin with and was often harvested by rural farmers to raise livestock. But on the slope in front of him, the vine was as tough as cowhide. As Chinyu ran, the vine constantly lashed at him. His legs burned with pain, but he was so excited that he didn't feel anything. He rushed up the slope in a single breath and listened carefully. Sure enough, it was coming from the valley. His eyes brightened. But just as he approached the valley, he heard a miserable scream. His footsteps came to a sudden stop. Wei! There was no mistaking this voice. How could he be here? Chinyu knew that he had been wrong from the start. The sweet smell of blood drilled into his nostrils, and beads of sweat covered his forehead. Just as he was about to turn and leave, his heart shrank and he fell to the ground without hesitation. Whoosh! A light green blade cut through his long robe and pierced into the ground by his scalp. With a pu sound, it penetrated into the ground. Qin Yu's robes were soaked with a cold sweat. If he had been hit just now, he feared his head would have been separated from his body. Junior apprentice brother, since you've come, why are you in such a hurry to leave? The sect master's chief disciple's complexion was pale, but there was a smile on his face. His tone was gentle, completely lacking the killing intent he had just now. Wei Wei fell to the ground, a long wound on his chest and stomach. Blood stained the ground, and he gasped for breath. He looked like a fish that had been thrown ashore, without any of his previous arrogance. As he saw who it was, his eyes erupted with brilliance. He shouted out, "Junior apprentice brother Qin Yu, hurry and help me. Han Dong has gone crazy. He wants to kill me. Hashtag my new book is recommended." Thank you, everyone. Chapter 2. Geniuses in 1 Second Remember Love? This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. The sect master's chief disciple was startled. You know each other? Qin Yu was panic-stricken after falling into a murderous situation. But the more he was like this, the clearer his thoughts became. He quickly judged the situation and turned around, his face pale. No, I don't know him. The sect master's chief disciple's eyes flashed. His smile became even more relaxed. But junior apprentice, brother Wei, seems to know you. Qin Yu shook his head again and again, panic-stricken. Wei roared, "Qin Yu, you ruined today's matter. Han Dong will never let you off. He has also been severely wounded, and that strike just now was the last of his strength. Hurry and kill him. Otherwise, once he recovers his magic power, we will all die." The sect master's chief disciple clapped his hands together and chuckled. Junior apprentice, brother Wei's thoughts are good. You drove junior apprentice, brother Qin Yu, to his death to waste my strength. I truly admire you. He looked at Qin Yu. After a moment of hesitation, he sighed. I made so many arrangements and nearly lost my life. Junior apprentice, brother Wei's luck is deep, and you can directly distribute the harvests. He pointed at Wei. Kill him, and we can divide what we find. As for what happened tonight, don't tell anyone else. How about it? Qin Yu's eyes brightened, a hint of excitement on his face. But before he could say anything, the earth shook and mountains shook. A large wild boar covered with pitch-black spikes rumbled into the mountain valley. Its jaws were wide open, its fangs bared, as if it were enraged that its territory had been invaded. 6 pairs of eyes fell on its body. The wild boar's fierce face froze. 3 of its legs were on the ground, and 1 was raised up. Its imposing appearance was laughable. It had secretly eaten spirit grasses and gained a bit of spiritual wisdom, so it could naturally feel the tense atmosphere. In particular, the auras of Su Jian and Wei left it feeling incomparably terrified. The wild boar's eyes fell on Qin Yu. Of the 3, he was undoubtedly the weakest. Qin Yu also looked at it. As he swept his eyes over the missing corner of its hoof, his heart was filled with complex emotions. The sect master's chief disciple chuckled. Today is really lively. Even such an idiot came to join in on the fun. He shook his head. It was just a wild boar. Even if it had a bit of spiritual wisdom, he didn't care. Junior apprentice, brother Qin Yu, have you made your decision? I swear that I won't harm you after this. Wei roared, kill me. Once the sect master notices, all of you will die. His hand that was pressed against the ground suddenly lifted up, and 3 hidden arrows flew straight towards Han Dong's face. In front of the first disciple of the sect leader, a thin halo burst out. The 3-sleeved darts sank deep into it, but were unable to penetrate it. But even so, there were still 3 wisps of dark black chi that penetrated the halo and entered his body. With a muffled grunt, Han Dong was sent flying backward. As soon as he was up in the air, he waved his hand and sent a talisman flying out. The talisman crossed the distance of 4 or 5 meters in the blink of an eye. Before the heavily injured Wei Wei could react, the talisman struck him. A clump of flame appeared with a whoosh. It was a strange green color. Before third senior brother could make a sound, he had turned into a pile of black bones. The phosphorescence adhered to the bones and quickly extinguished, leaving behind patches of phosphorescence that glowed in the darkness. The hare leaped and the falcon descended. Life and death had been decided. Cough! Cough! Han Dong coughed with difficulty. The 3 wisps of dark black chi had opened up 3 bloody holes in his body. His blood was black and emitted a fishy smell. It was clear that it contained poison. He took out a jade bottle from his waist and swallowed several pills. He forced a smile and said, "I never thought that the secluded bend bow that appeared a while ago would actually fall into Wei Wei's hands. I almost failed miserably." As the sect leader spoke, the first disciple shifted his body several times. He glanced behind him and saw that the wild boar was still frozen in place beneath the tree. He revealed a satisfied expression. As he casually swept his eyes over third senior apprentice brother's corpse, a faint blue light sprinkled out. It was clear and bright, like the bluest sea in the world. Han Dong's eyes blazed with heat for a moment before returning to tranquility in the next. "My promise is still valid. You and I will each take half of Wei Wei's belongings. Then we can both forget about tonight's events. Of course, if junior apprentice brother believes you can kill me and take all the treasures for yourself, you can also give it a try." But soon his expression turned timid. "Little, how could I dare to be disrespectful to senior apprentice brother? This chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page." "I am already satisfied." Han Dong smiled and nodded. "Junior brother, you're very courageous. I can't move freely, so I'll have to trouble junior brother to take a look and see what treasures are hidden on Wei Wei's body." Qin Yu's eyes revealed a greedy light. He stared at the sect master's chief disciple and carefully walked over. By the time he averted his gaze, his complexion was dignified. But his voice didn't match his expression at all. It was trembling with excitement. "Senior apprentice brother, how did you know that third senior apprentice brother had a treasure on him?" "1 step, 2 steps. Han Dong's voice sounded from behind him. "Wei Wei's spiritual roots are heterogeneous, and his cultivation has been slow for many years. 2 months ago, he suddenly underwent a complete transformation, breaking through the 7th level of the Qi refining realm in 27 days. This is the most suspicious point. 3 steps for steps. Others think that he's well prepared, but I don't believe it at all. Because 9 years ago, I was the one who tested Wei Wei into the sect. Love Gobe Small, say Netku 5 steps, 6 steps. I have a good memory. I will never forget what I've seen or done. Naturally, I won't forget Wei Wei's aptitude." His voice was filled with mockery. The 7th step, leaning against a large tree, Han Dong's eyes were ice cold. A blood-red light appeared on his fingertips, and his lips curved in contempt. At this time, Qin Yu stumbled, as if he had tripped over something. Han Dong's movements paused for a moment. In the next moment, there was a loud explosion behind him. A whoa! The startled wild boar let out a strange cry. It subconsciously rushed forwards, its movements completely different from its fat body as it ruthlessly smashed into Han Dong's body. 2 tusks pierced through his chest, and one of them just happened to pierce through his heart. The sect master's chief disciple's eyes widened and blood gushed out of his mouth. With endless anger and unwillingness, his head tilted to the side as he died. The wild boar flung the corpse away and rushed out of the valley in a panic. In the distance, one could still hear its panic-stricken howls. A blood-red light exploded in the air, covering Han Dong's corpse. By the time it fell to the ground, it had already turned to ashes. The pitiful sect master's chief, disciple, had thought that everything was in his control. But in the end he had been killed by the idiot he had called him, not even leaving behind corpse. Qin Yu fell to the ground, as if all the bones in his body had been pulled out. Sweat gushed out from all his pores, soaking his robes and sticking to his body, activating the mechanism, frightening the wild boar, killing Han Dong. Rather than saying that this was Qin Yu's plan, it was better to say that it was his luck. If anything had gone wrong, he would have died. Looking at the direction the wild boar had fled in, Qin Yu's lips curled up in a smile. "Half a year ago you nearly killed me, but today you've saved me. Our debts have been written off." As his eyes fell on Wei Wei's corpse, he couldn't suppress the excitement in his heart. That deep blue sea had attracted all of his attention. If Han Dong was willing to use any means necessary to kill a fellow disciple, it could be seen just how precious it was. Moreover, there was also his third senior apprentice brother's rise as proof. Qin Yu gasped for breath. He struggled to crawl up and walk towards the skeleton. But before he could take several steps, there was a popping sound in his body, and all the strength in his body faded away. An incomparably hollow and weak feeling filled him, causing his consciousness to blur. His body and mind were exhausted, and his emotions surged up and down. The extremely fragile second level of energy refining had collapsed at this moment. No. Qin Yu roared in his heart. He knew that once he fell down, he would never have a chance to stand up again. He wasn't willing to die like this. His body fell to the ground. Qin Yu's eyes could no longer see anything. His trembling hands grasped the ground, and his body wriggled forwards. After an unknown period of time, Qin Yu grasped something cold. He didn't know what he had grasped, but he didn't let go. His consciousness fell into darkness. The darkness of the night was thick and viscous, like ink that wouldn't melt. The night wind flowed through the valley, carrying with it a faint smell of blood. Specks of ghostly green flashed like a ghost fire at a grave. Qin Yu lay down beside Wei Wei's skeleton. Beneath the illumination of this ghostly green light, his young face was deathly pale. He frowned in pain, his gasps for breath. "This chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page." It was incomparably weak. If there wasn't an accident, Qin Yu would soon leave this world, adding another lonely soul to this land. But perhaps it was fate, perhaps it was luck, or perhaps it was an accident. It was destined that he wouldn't die today. Qin Yu's right index finger passed through the holes in Wei Wei's clothes and fell onto the skeleton. The dark green phosphorescence spots seemed to sense the aura of flesh and blood. They began to wriggle like living creatures, flowing into his body through his finger like mercury. Qin Yu's entire body immediately turned ghostly green. Large patches of phosphorescence spots appeared on his skin, making him look extremely strange. Even though he had fainted, he still couldn't help but scream out in pain from deep within his throat, his body constantly twitching. In truth, Qin Yu was lucky. If it weren't for the fact that the strength of the sinister phosphorescence symbol had been nearly exhausted when he killed his third senior apprentice brother, he would have already become a skeleton. That deep and pure deep blue, even though it was in his hand, didn't react at all. But at this moment, when the phosphorescence poison invaded Qin Yu's body, the tranquil deep blue suddenly began to stir, like a spring breeze caressing the surface of a lake. The horrifying phosphorescent spots on his body began to rapidly melt away like frost beneath the blazing sun. This was a blessing in disguise. Qin Yu should have died. After the phosphorescence poison invaded his body and was dissolved, although his breathing was weak, it had already stabilized. A faint flush of blood appeared on his pale face. He grasped the deep blue and lay down on the ground, sleeping soundly as if he had everything in his life. As the sky began to brighten, Qin Yu was awoken by the Eastern Mountain sect's morning bell. After a brief moment of confusion, His eyes widened and he crawled up. Although his entire body was aching and weak, he still felt extremely comfortable in his chest. Even when he gasped for breath, there was no stabbing pain. How could this be? Last night, it was clearly Qin Yu's heart shook. He looked around, a complex look in his eyes. The stone under the tree, the skeleton in front of him, and the cold hand that he subconsciously clenched. All of these things told him that this wasn't a dream. The youth panicked for a moment, but he soon suppressed it. He opened his hand and looked at the thumb-sized lantern in his palm, his eyes brightening. He noticed that one of his fingers had turned a strange, ghostly green color, but he didn't have time to think about it. He placed the lantern in his chest and quickly cleaned up the scene. He was only the lowest of cultivation rookies and didn't know any magic arts of immortal cultivators. He could only erase all traces of himself so that he wouldn't be exposed. After a moment, besides the large stone under the tree, the mountain valley had been restored to its original state. Third senior apprentice brother's skeleton, clothes, and a hidden crossbow were buried by Qin Yu. The several jade bottles also suffered the same fate. Of course, the pills inside had been separated and put away. In addition, there were also 2 finger-length stones. Qin Yu could clearly feel the lively spiritual strength contained within them. Spirit stones. The blood fire that Han Dong released had burned everything he had to ashes, saving Qin Yu a great deal of trouble. But as he thought about how Han Dong was the chief disciple of the sect master, he must have even more treasures on him. If they were all destroyed by the blood fire, Qin Yu couldn't help but feel a bit distressed. He carefully looked around and determined that he couldn't find any flaws. Then he walked backwards. Although his speed was a bit slow, he still cleaned up his footprints along the way. When he left the mountain valley and discovered traces of people, he turned and hurried away. After this delay, even though Qin Yu tried to move as fast as possible, he still spent a great deal of time. The outer court disciples had already gone out to work as the morning bell rang. However, this also saved Qin Yu a lot of trouble. He smoothly returned to his dwelling. It was only when he closed the door and isolated himself from the outside world that he finally let out a sigh of relief. An intense wave of exhaustion washed over him. He forced himself to change his clothes. Then he placed the lantern, spirit stones, and pills into a secret compartment near the window. Then he fell into a deep sleep on his bed. After an unknown period of time, Qin Yu was awoken by a series of rapid knocks on his door. He saw 2 doors loudly crash to the ground. Several robust and agile young men flashed in, their heads bowed as they stood to the side. Chapter 3. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go. Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Qin Yu's expression stiffened for a moment, but it soon disappeared. He timidly said, Su Jian, what are you doing? Don't mess around, I'm not afraid of you. Perhaps because he was too agitated, he coughed violently as soon as he finished speaking. His face was pale and he was in great pain. Love, go, small, say, Net Kue, middle-aged man walked in. He was dressed in a green robe and had an extraordinary bearing. He glanced around and frowned. The residence of an outer sect disciple was already extremely narrow, and with a few people squeezing in, it was even more cramped. However, the injuries of the disciple in front of him were extremely suspicious. Su Jian observed his expression and said sternly, Senior Marshal Brother Han Dong and Senior Marshal Brother Wei Wei were murdered last night. Right now, the mountain gate is locked to search for the murderer. Answer Marshal Uncle Li's questions truthfully. If there's even half a lie, I'll make sure you're stuck between life and death. When he turned around, his ferocious expression turned into one of flattery, filled with the intent to curry favor. Li Mu didn't care about the fawning of these outer disciples. He said directly, Let me ask you, where were you last night? What happened to the injuries on your body? Qin Yu's face was filled with panic, as if he were completely at a loss for what to do. He said in a trembling voice, This disciple was in my room last night. Because of my old illness, I missed today's work. I ask for Marshal Uncle's forgiveness." Li Mu frowned. This disciple did not answer the question out of fear, but he did not suspect anything. This person is suffering from an old illness. Su Jian couldn't wait for Qin Yu's misfortune to befall him. But at this time, he didn't dare to speak carelessly. He respectfully said, reporting to High Master, "Qin Yu was punished half a year ago because of the medicine garden incident. It is true that he has yet to recover." Li Mu glanced at Qin Yu's terrified expression and secretly shook his head. He was only at the first level of the qi refining realm, and he was a sickly man who didn't have long to live. Judging from his temperament, he was also a coward. How could he possibly be related to the murderer? But since he was here, he had to investigate. He waved his hand. "Search." Su Jian and the others immediately took action, almost turning the entire room upside down. It was a complete mess. Of course, he didn't gain anything. Li Mu simply turned around. "Let's go." Su Jian respectfully complied. Before he left, he looked over coldly, as if unwilling. Qin Yu lowered his head, hiding his expression from sight. Even so, his heart trembled. The deaths of Han Dong and Wei Wei had actually been discovered so quickly. Fortunately, he was cautious and hid the lantern and other items. Otherwise, if he were to be discovered, he wouldn't know how he would die. "Taro! Taro! I saw Su Jian. Are they here to bully you again? I'm going to settle the score with them." The young man was tall and sturdy, like a human-shaped iron tower. When he ran over, the ground trembled. Even though his face was filled with anger, he had a baby face. It was young and round, and there wasn't much fierceness in it. It was because of this that he, whose real name was Lang Tu, was jokingly called Potato. "Qin Yu waved his hand. "Don't worry about them. Help me up." Lang Tu was shocked. He hurriedly supported him. "Are you all right?" Qin Yu bitterly smiled. From the moment he saw Su Jian and the others enter, he had been putting on an act. Although he had successfully muddled his way through, his heart was still trembling. His hands and feet were numb. He helped Potato to sit on the bed and wiped the sweat off his forehead. "Taro, what's going on?" Lang Tu anxiously asked. Qin Yu briefly explained what had happened. Lang Tu's face was filled with fear. He never thought that things would be so dangerous just now. But soon he let out a long breath. The words he said nearly angered Qin Yu to death. "Luckily your body is weak. It's hard for you to even kill a chicken. So you definitely aren't the culprit. Otherwise, things would have been really troublesome." Qin Yu glared at him. "If you don't know how to speak, then don't say anything. You're the one with a kidney deficiency. Hurry up and make something to eat. I'm starving to death." Lang Tu foolishly smiled. "You're in luck. I stewed a pheasant last night, and there's still half a pot of meat left. I'll bring it to you." As he walked to the door, he rubbed his head. "That's right. I finished today's errand for you. You don't need to worry about being punished." Seeing him quickly leave, Qin Yu's heart warmed. He had a deep understanding of Potato's appetite. Let alone a single pheasant, even if he had 10 of them, he would still be able to eat them. This chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page. He could also clean out the entire meal. The reason he said there was half a pot of meat left was because it was specially left for him. After drinking the last mouthful of soup, he laid down his chopsticks. A warm feeling rose up in his belly, making him feel much more spirited. Lang Tu had already left. This boy's cultivation talent wasn't good, but his mortal body was innately tyrannical. He was prepared to walk down the path of becoming a saint through the mortal body. He had gathered some stone blocks and trained himself every day. His diligence was enough to make one blush with shame. Of course, before he left, he had already replaced 2 new doors for the small courtyard. After tidying up a bit, Qin Yu stood up and stretched. Then he lay down on his bed and closed his eyes. The sky gradually darkened and the room fell into darkness. Qin Yu remained motionless. His breathing was long and slow, as if he had already fallen asleep. The moon was high in the sky, and the night was deep. Soon, it was the second half of the night. Shwa! Qin Yu's eyes opened. They were bright and clear, without the least bit of drowsiness. He pretended to wake up and carefully listened to his surroundings. Then he returned to his bed and lay down for a while. When he didn't see any abnormalities, he stood up and carefully opened a hidden compartment in the wall. A deep blue light flowed out. Qin Yu was startled. He discovered that this blue light only covered a radius of a foot. Only then did he let out a breath of relief. Although he didn't know what this thumb-sized lantern was, just by looking at how it shined blue light during the day and how it shined during the night, he knew it was extraordinary. Sitting back down on his bed, Qin Yu thought for a moment. He took out a small knife and made a small cut on his finger. Blood flowed out. For better or worse, he was a member of an immortal cultivation sect, so he had some basic common sense. For instance, what he was doing now was the crudest method of using a drop of blood to recognize a master. Helplessly watching the bead of blood fall onto the lantern and then slide down. Qin Yu was a bit disappointed, but also relieved. In the end, this was a treasure that he had risked his life to obtain. So how could it so easily recognize a master? He played around with it for a while, and even used the extremely weak magic power of the first level of energy refining in his body. But he still couldn't find a way to use the lantern. Qin Yu thought for a moment. Then he placed it to the side and opened the wrapped pills. He hadn't forgotten that he was still a seriously ill patient. If he didn't hurry up and cure himself, what if something like last night happened again? Qin Yu didn't think he would have such good luck again. Wei Wei had filled 4 jade bottles with pills. The number was terrifying. Qin Yu had to expend a great deal of effort to identify one of them. It was a minor spirit pill that was given to disciples with outstanding talent by the sect to increase their cultivation speed. This was because Qin Yu had seen a fellow disciple flaunt it in the past. As for the other 3, he could only put them away for now. He didn't dare to randomly use them before determining their effects. Holding a fragrant minor spirit pill between his fingers, Qin Yu sighed inwardly. Wei Wei was truly worthy of being the disciple that the sect master valued the most. In just this batch of pills alone, he feared there wasn't a single disciple in the Eastern Mountains sect that could compare with him. But now all of them were his. Taking a deep breath, Qin Yu swallowed the minor spirit pill with anticipation and quickly closed his eyes. This was the first time he had swallowed a cultivation pill, and he had no experience at all. He was careful and didn't dare to be careless. As the minor spirit pill fell into his stomach, a warmth rose up and circulated through his body, making him feel warm and comfortable, as if he were soaking in warm water. During this process, the warm medicinal efficacy blended with his flesh and blood, rapidly transforming into pure spiritual strength that flowed into his dantian. Qin Yu immediately fell in love with this feeling. He never knew that cultivating could be so pleasurable. As long as he closed his eyes and galvanized the medicinal efficacy, the spiritual strength within his body would rapidly grow. This feeling of constantly becoming stronger left him intoxicated. After an unknown period of time, the warmth flowing through his body slowly dissipated. Qin Yu opened his eyes. Without hesitation, he took out another minor spirit pill and swallowed it down, closing his eyes to cultivate, opening his eyes to swallow the pill. Unknowingly, a night passed. When the sun rose in the east, Qin Yu's aura suddenly changed. A breeze blew through the room, causing his clothes to flutter. Energy refining second level. Qin Yu opened his eyes, a look of pleasant surprise on his face. He never thought that the cultivation he lost would be restored to its original state in a short night. He leapt up. Not only was he not tired from a night of not sleeping, but he was actually brimming with energy. He could feel the magic power of the second level of energy refining flowing through his body, as well as an unprecedented comfort in his chest. Qin Yu suppressed the urge to laugh out loud, but the happiness on his face became increasingly bright. Not only was his cultivation restored, but his old illness had also been cured. This was truly double happiness. This chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page. This allowed Qin Yu to clearly understand just how important pills were to a cultivator. In 7 years, he had reached the second level of energy refining. Compared to the cultivation speed of a single night, just how amazing was that? If he could have an endless supply of pills, then even if his talent was poor, he could still possess a mind-boggling cultivation speed. In the future, he might even be able to become a supreme being of the immortal path. As soon as this thought appeared, Qin Yu suppressed it. He revealed a self-deprecating smile. Pills weren't easy to refine, not to mention how rare and precious the materials were. Just the astonishing rate of failure was enough to make anyone tremble in fear. Eating pills as if they were food to increase one's cultivation, let alone the small Eastern Mountain sect. Even the legendary #1 sect of the Southern Empire's 100,000 territories, Immortal Eclipse Valley, was unable to accomplish this. It's just dawn, and I'm already dreaming. Hurry and wake up. Qin Yu muttered to himself. His expression had already calmed down, and he was deep in thought. Although he had managed to muddle through yesterday, he still had to be a bit more cautious in the next few days. He also had to slow down on swallowing pills and cultivating. Otherwise, just the fact that his cultivation had increased by leaps and bounds was the greatest doubt. He didn't want to be overjoyed and fall into sorrow. He picked up the thumb-sized lantern. The blue light it emitted vanished as the sky brightened. This was absolutely an amazing treasure. Perhaps the sudden rise of his third senior apprentice brother was related to it. Qin Yu subconsciously tightened his grip on the lantern, a look of anticipation in his eyes. Although pills were good, in his heart this lantern was the most important. Just as he was about to put away the remaining spirit pills along with the lantern, Qin Yu suddenly frowned, a look of surprise on his face. Of the minor spirit pills spread out on the bed, the dozen or so at the corners were clearly different. They seemed to emit a sparkling light, and although it was weak, Qin Yu didn't think he was mistaken. He took one out and placed it next to the ordinary minor spirit pills. The difference became even more obvious. All of the minor spirit pills were the same. Even when he poured them out last night, Qin Yu could clearly see them. He picked up one of the shining minor spirit pills and sniffed it. A medicinal fragrance entered his nose, causing his spirits to rise. These pills were absolutely extraordinary. But what was going on here? In just a single night, these pills seemed to have automatically upgraded. A restless feeling surged in Qin Yu's heart, as if some idea was about to break through the ground. But it was difficult to grasp it. What was it? What was it? Suddenly, Qin Yu's eyes fell onto the lantern in his hand. Like a bolt of lightning, it tore through the fog. The thumb-sized lantern. Yes, that was it. Qin Yu's memories became incomparably clear. He remembered last night when he had placed the lantern to the side and then swallowed the pills to cultivate. The dozen or so pills that had undergone a strange change were all near it. Or, it was more accurate to say that they were within the foot of blue light that the thumb-sized lantern emitted. Qin Yu's heart began to race and his mouth felt dry. He bit down on the tip of his tongue and forced himself to remain calm. This was only a guess. He had to stabilize himself first. As for the truth, he would find out after tonight. But deep in his heart, Qin Yu had an intuition that his guess wasn't wrong. This was because his third senior apprentice, Brother Wei's sudden rise was the best evidence. On this day, Qin Yu was muddle-headed, using the excuse of recuperating from his illness. He didn't go anywhere. Lang Tu had come once. He hadn't discovered anything wrong with Qin Yu. After saying that he had helped him with his work, he hurriedly left. Lang Tu's diligence continued day after day, never ceasing. Night arrived as promised. Qin Yu sat in the darkness. The thumb-sized lantern on the table emitted a deep blue light, but everything within a foot of it seemed like a deep sea. Inside were minor spirit pills. 10 of each type of pill were neatly placed around him. 5 of each type were bathed in blue light, and the other 5 were outside. That night, Qin Yu didn't sleep. When the sun rose in the east, he pushed open the door and left. He stood in the small courtyard, facing the blazing sun that leapt out from the ground. He seemed to be in a daze. In the hidden compartment of the room, there were 40 different types of pills. 20 of them were bathed in blue light. They had all been upgraded. After a long, long time, Qin Yu let out a long breath. The absent-mindedness on his face was swept away. His black eyes were like an ancient well in the mountains, dark and deep. They reflected 2 suns, blazing with an unprecedented confidence. Today his destiny had changed. Chapter 4. Genius in a second, remember love, go away. This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. Half a month later, the mountain gates gradually relaxed. The storm of chasing down the murderers gradually subsided because they didn't have any results. However, Han Dong and Wei Wei had died, and their corpses were nowhere to be seen. There had to be an explanation for this matter, and the blame was finally placed on the head of the demonic sect. The demonic sect was originally the mortal enemy of all immortal cultivation sections. In these past years, they had shouldered the blame of countless crimes, so they didn't care about adding one more to the mix. As Qin Yu relaxed, he also felt a bit depressed in his heart. In this world, the greatest pain was to hold a treasure in one's hand and not be able to use it. In this half-month, he had used the little blue lamp, thumb lantern, to upgrade all of his pills. As long as he absorbed them, his cultivation would rise by leaps and bounds. But he didn't dare to. Wei Wei had broken through the 7 realms of energy refining in 27 days, and his fame was unparalleled. If it weren't for this, he wouldn't have attracted a fatal disaster. Qin, you didn't want to follow in his footsteps. Could it be that he could only waste away his time with treasures? Qin Yu felt an incomparable headache. Unless he could avoid the attention of the outside world, this was an unsolvable problem. Lang Tu carried a fat chicken. Its feathers were bright red, and its crown was high. With a single glance, one could tell that it was an overlord of chickens, a romantic character that had mesmerized tens of thousands of hens. But now its glory was gone. It hung its head dejectedly, its eyes hazy with tears. You little chicken, you can actually cry? What happened to the ferocity you used to peck me with just now? Lang Tu shook his hand. Don't look so sad. This young master has been eyeing you for a long time now. Originally, I could have let you continue the family line and provide me with an endless supply of chickens. But this young master's body hasn't been well recently, so I can only use you to make up for it. Don't worry, I will clean up your feathers and bury you. This can also be considered letting you rest in peace. Hee, this young master is quite righteous. The chicken overlord's eyes rolled back in its sockets. It was unknown whether it was because of fright or because it was shaken, but its head drooped and it fainted. Bang, bang, bang. Lang Tu shouted at the top of his lungs, "Open the door! Hurry up and open the door! Taro, I've come to deliver delicious food." Qin Yu opened the door and lazily glanced at the pheasant he was carrying. With an "Oh!" he turned around and left. Now his heart was filled with cat claws, and he couldn't lift his spirits for anything. Lang Tu grumbled in dissatisfaction. "Hey, I brought a fat chicken to reward you. For better or worse, you should at least give me a smile. Don't be so unappreciative of my good intentions." As he spoke, he was stunned for a moment before nervously saying, "Taro, did your illness flare up again? Don't scare me." Qin Yu smacked away the hand that was rubbing his forehead and grinned. This brat's hand was too strong, and his calluses were as hard as stone. "Don't curse me, I'm fine right now." His lips moved. "Potato, tell me, what can I do?" Qin Yu shut his mouth and helplessly shook his head. This was truly a case of desperate times. It would already be amazing if this boy Potato didn't lose him. Asking him to think of a solution was just a waste of effort. "Love, go small, say." Nek Lang too rubbed his head, a puzzled expression on his face. Why did you only say half of it? If you have any difficulties, I'll definitely help you if I can. This kid was really silly. Qin Yu snappily said, "Don't ask. Hurry up and cook. I'm really a little hungry." Oh. Lang Tu turned and walked away. Suddenly, the courtyard doors were kicked open from the outside, and several strong youths rushed in. Lang Tu's complexion changed. He clenched his teeth and roared, "Su Jian, it's you bastard again! Did I beat you up too much? You still dare to bully me? I won't forgive you today." Su Jian's complexion was ugly. He lifted a hand and pointed at Lang Tuesday. "Lang Tu, we'll slowly settle our accounts in the future. But today, I didn't come here to have fun. I came here to announce something." His eyes fell on Qin Yu, a malicious expression on his face. "The pill disposal department's junior apprentice, Brother Wang, has died. The outer court needs to recommend a successor. When the Lord Steward asked, I recommended junior apprentice, Brother Qin Yu. TSK, this is a cushy job. It's incomparably leisurely with food and lodging provided. Qin Yu, shouldn't you be thanking me?" Lang Tu roared, "I'll kill you, you bastard!" Before he could rush out, he was caught by Qin Yu. Lang Tu was afraid that he would injure Qin Yu, so he didn't dare to struggle. He constantly roared, "Let me go! This bastard wants to kill you. I'll send him away first." His face was as red as blood, and his veins were blue. This chapter is not yet finished. Please turn the page. The current Lang Tu was like a vicious beast that would devour anyone it saw. Su Jian subconsciously took a step back. By the time he reacted, his face was flushed red, but he didn't dare to attack Lang Tuesday. This is the steward's order. Qin, you must report today. Also, Lang Tu, don't be so arrogant. Let's go and see what happens. The several people left in a panic. Lang Tu shouted out, "Qin Yu, why didn't you let me do it? What kind of place is the pill disposal department? Su Jian wants to harm you." Qin Yu let go of Lang Tu and shook his arms. Even though Lang Tu didn't dare to struggle out of consideration for him, the faint strength still caused his arms to go numb and sore. This boy was simply a vicious beast in human form. Don't shout, I know. But this time, Su Jian has miscalculated. Lang Tu flew into a rage. "I think you've gone insane. The pill disposal department, that is the pill disposal department. It is sealed off from the outside, and it is difficult for anyone to take a single step inside all year round. They specialize in handling all sorts of waste pills and deteriorating materials. With all sorts of toxins corroding your body, you won't be able to last more than 3 months." He clenched his teeth and turned to leave. "I will go now and plead with the steward to enter the pill disposal department in your place." Seeing Lang Tu's angry expression, Qin Yu found it funny, but he was even more moved. He grabbed onto Lang Tu and said, "Lang Tu, between the two of us, who do you think is smarter?" Lang Tu straightened his neck. "Of course it's you." Qin Yu arched an eyebrow. "Since do you think that I would seek my own death?" He restrained his expression and earnestly said, "Potato, you are my best brother, so I won't lie to you. Don't worry. To others, the pill disposal department is a place filled with toxins, but that isn't necessarily the case for me." Qin Yu looked down at the index finger of his right hand wrapped in his sleeve, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. "Su Jian, I'm afraid I really have to thank you this time." Qin Yu already knew what the ghostly green color on his right index finger was. 2 days ago, when he was cleaning up the weeds near the medicine garden, he had personally witnessed how terrifying it was. With just a light touch, a 3-edged grass that was buried deep in the ground and was extremely difficult to dig out without expending a great deal of strength had actually withered on the spot, turning green all over. Qin Yu's eyes shrank. He immediately thought of Wei Wei's skeleton. After several more experiments, he was able to determine that a terrifying corrosive poison had gathered within his finger. If this poison invaded his body, there was no way he could escape. If so, then the reason he survived must be related to the little blue lamp. This was because that night it was the only variable. Reality proved that Qin Yu's guess wasn't wrong. He carefully found several poisonous grasses around the medicine garden that weren't too poisonous. After determining that they wouldn't kill him, he held the little blue lamp in his hand and drank some of their juice. In the end, the wisps of black, poisonous gas gathered on this finger under his gaze, unable to cause any harm to him at all. Even when Qin Yu risked increasing the strength of the poison that was strong enough to knock down a large bear was ineffective against him. From this, Qin Yu discovered that the little blue lamp's second function was to dispel poison, or, to be more overbearing, it could be called poison immunity. It was because of this that he was able to calmly face Su Jian's plot and even secretly rejoice. Pills were endlessly beneficial to a cultivator, but if one failed in the refining process, the medicinal efficacy would be impure, and there was a chance that it would produce some sort of poison. Because this poison was naturally formed from a refining failure, it was extremely difficult to eradicate once infected. Unless one's cultivation was high enough, they could use their cultivation to forcefully suppress it. But even so, their cultivation would stagnate and it would be extremely difficult to advance. Most victims could only howl in pain as they were tortured to death. Not all waste pills were poisonous, but every waste pill had a chance of containing poison. No one dared to casually discard them. Thus, in most sects, there was a special disposal department that used extreme methods to thoroughly destroy waste pills. With the little blue lamp in hand, Qin Yu didn't need to worry about poison. Then, everything else was better for him. First, everyone knew that the pill disposal department was poisonous and no one took a single step inside. This was a hidden environment where Qin Yu could boldly swallow pills and cultivate without worrying about being discovered. This chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page. Secondly, every year the pill disposal department gathered countless waste pills. The little blue lamp could upgrade pills, so it might have some effect on these waste pills. If just thinking about it made one's mouth dry up. Moreover, the pill disposal department had many ancient records on pills. It was said that they were created by people who had entered over the years in order to survive. Although they weren't too profound, they were more than precious to Qin Yu. Combining all of these factors together, Qin Yu couldn't think of anywhere else in the Eastern Mountains sect besides the pill disposal department that was more suitable for him. Thus, Qin Yu didn't delay at all. Not long after Su Jian and the others left, he sent off the confused Lang Tu, packed up his things, and rushed towards his own happy life. He had a chicken to accompany him the entire way. It really was a chicken. According to Lang Tu's words, "Taro, with your current physical condition, you might not be stronger than this chicken overlord. In any case, you won't be able to eat it today, so you might as well bring it with you. If one day it seems like it can't hold on any longer, then you can think of a way to run away." Reasoning with a dead-headed person was an extremely difficult matter. This was because a dead-headed person would wrap their brains around your body, making you as stiff as it and then defeat you. Qin Yu had already experienced this before, so he straightforwardly agreed. He thought that one day he would be able to satisfy his craving for good food. A place like the pill disposal department had to be as remote as possible. As Qin Yu hurried over, he was slightly out of breath. His face was flushed red, but he couldn't hide the smile on his lips. This appearance caused the anxious senior apprentice, brother, that was waiting here to be startled. Was this person so careless that he didn't know how to write the word death, or had he already lost his mind and abandoned himself to despair? But no matter what the possibility was, he didn't want to accompany him any longer. Just by approaching this place, he felt a chill run through his body. He tossed down the entry ban and pointed a finger. Without even saying a word, let alone exchanging greetings, the senior apprentice brother quickly ran away. Qin Yu was startled for a moment before he smiled. This was the effect he wanted. It was best if no one came to disturb him. He mentioned the chicken overlord and said, "Little thing, it looks like we'll have to depend on each other in the future." The entry ban could be considered a true immortal treasure. It could be used to open the cave dwelling's protective array formation. Thinking about it, the Eastern Mountain sect had arranged an array formation around the pill disposal department to prevent pill toxins from leaking out. This left Qin Yu satisfied. Without the entry ban, no one could enter the disposal department without his permission unless they tried to force their way in. This was an additional layer of protection in terms of concealment. The Eastern Mountain sect would maintain the array formation as usual, but the disposal department clearly didn't have such treatment. This could be seen from the dilapidated entrance. This was a round hole cut into a mountain. A light fog surrounded it. To build a place to dispose of waste pills in a mountain, it could be seen just how cautious they were. Qin Yu took a deep breath and revolved his magic power to pour into the entry ban. A powerful suction force instantly erupted, sucking out all the magic power in his body. Qin Yu's field of vision darkened, and he nearly fainted. Sweat gushed out from his pores, soaking his robes. The entry ban shined with a faint light. The fog around the hole seemed to sense it and parted to reveal a channel. Qin Yu took several deep breaths, the tumbling feeling in his chest dispersing a little. As he looked at the opening array formation, he bitterly smiled. The second level of energy refining was truly trash. If he was any worse, he feared he wouldn't even be able to open the array formation. He didn't know how long the array formation would last. Qin Yu didn't dare to delay any longer. He stepped into the hole, and the fog behind him closed up. As he entered the hole, he discovered that he had completely underestimated the Eastern Mountain sect's level of caution. The disposal department wasn't inside the mountain, but was slanted all the way underground. The passage was dark and gloomy. Even with a lighting array formation, it was still impossible to see his surroundings clearly. But to Qin Yu, it was no different from daytime. Sweeping his eyes around, Qin Yu's pupils shrank. He could see that the stone steps beneath his feet were polished to the point that they shimmered with light. It was clear that many people were walking on them. But what was startling was that the ground and the surrounding walls were covered with blood stains as well as signs of people digging. The blood stains were unremarkable in the darkness. If one didn't pay attention, they wouldn't have noticed them at all. Layer upon layer, the dark blood seemed to have seeped into the stone. Chapter 5. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. What was going on? Qin Yu immediately became vigilant. Without thinking too much, he tossed aside the chicken overlord and took out a minor spirit pill from his chest and swallowed it. After being illuminated by the little blue lamp, the pill's medicinal efficacy had risen along with it. A single pill was now equal to 3 of the previous ones. The medicinal efficacy circulated through his body, rapidly transforming into spiritual strength. Soon, Qin Yu's 2 energies and magic power were completely restored and even slightly improved. He didn't have time to feel distressed, so he wasted a minor spirit pill. He leaned against a stone wall and slowly descended. Just now he had already thought it through. The disposal department was his best option, and he could not easily give it up. Of course, the most important reason that prompted him to make this decision was that the disposal department had changed more than a dozen people over the past 7 years, and the shortest one had lasted for 2 months. It was clear that even if there was danger inside, it wouldn't be immediately fatal. Have a safe journey. Besides the sound of his own footsteps, there was no sound at all in the quiet underground. Qin Yu didn't dare to be careless. He carefully searched the area several times, and only after he determined there was no danger did he relax. Then a thoughtful look crossed his face. Since there was no external danger, the traces of digging at the entrance and the spilled blood could only have been caused by the cultivators of the disposal department. Why was that? Qin Yu was puzzled, but he couldn't find an answer. He secretly paid attention and began to clean up. The previous senior brother Wang, who had died, must have been in great pain at the last moment, so he had made a mess of his residence. Although he did not care about the environment, he would be staying here for a long time in the future, so he had to clean it up. 2 hours later, Qin Yu carefully cleaned up the area. During this process, he didn't find anything. It seemed that some things could only be slowly discovered in the future. Qin Yu sat down cross-legged on a cushion and took out all the minor spirit pills he had. After counting them, there were still 37 left. He couldn't help but reveal a look of anticipation. He had already endured for several days. Now that he was in a safe environment, he could no longer hold back. He wondered how much these 37 minor spirit pills could increase his cultivation. He swallowed the pill, closed his eyes, and absorbed. Qin Yu's entire mind was immersed in cultivation. The magic power within his body rose at an astonishing speed. When the last minor spirit pill turned into surging magic power that fused into his cultivation, Qin Yu slowly opened his eyes. A sharp light flashed in them, incomparably dazzling in the darkness. His entire person hadn't changed at all. The only difference was that his face was a bit more rosy, but as he straightened his back, he naturally emitted a completely different aura. Magnanimous, steady, confident. It was as if he had been reborn. As he felt the magic power flowing through his body that was several times stronger than before, he couldn't help but smile. The fifth layer of qi refining. 37 upgraded minor spirit pills had forcibly increased his cultivation by 3 levels, and this was because his aptitude was too poor. His absorption of spiritual power was slow, and he wasted a lot of the medicinal power. Otherwise, he could have increased his cultivation by another level. But Qin Yu was already satisfied. The 5th level of energy refining was something he didn't even dare to think about before. Unfortunately, he had already used up all of the minor spirit pills, and he had yet to figure out the effects of the other pills, so his cultivation had to stop here. He stood up and twisted his body. There was a loud crackling sound from his joints. Qin Yu silently calculated the time and was startled. He didn't think that this cultivation session would take nearly 7 days. He didn't feel it at all, as if it had only been a moment. Cultivation knows no time. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of years have passed. I finally have some understanding of this saying. Qin Yu sighed. Then he gathered his thoughts and walked towards another room. When he was cleaning up before, he already knew that it was a study and there were quite a few alchemy records. It was just that he was in a hurry to cultivate at that time, so he didn't stay for long. Now was the perfect time to look through them and determine what pills he had left so that he could resume his cultivation as soon as possible. After experiencing the rapid rise of his cultivation, Qin Yu had thoroughly fallen in love with this sort of cultivation feeling. Although it was called a study, the truth was that there were several rough holes cut into the stone walls. Besides a tattered table and chairs, there was nothing else. This chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page. Something else. There was an oil lamp on the table, presumably used for illumination. Next to it was a pile of messy papers with extremely sloppy handwriting. Qin Yu didn't need to light the lamp. He first looked at the messy papers on the table. His eyes were filled with shocking hatred and curses, but they were useless. He waved his hand and swept them to the side. Then he turned and picked up a book. There was no title. He flipped to the first page. I have spent my life refining pills, but my talent is slow and it is difficult for me to reach a higher level. I have left behind my experiences for future generations, hoping that they can. As he skimmed through the book, he saw that it was filled with complaints. Soon, Qin Yu was startled. This cultivator surnamed Su had recorded down his alchemy process in detail. This book was similar to alchemy notes. And what was even more amazing was that he also described the situation of the pills he refined. This was what Qin Yu needed the most right now. He quickly flipped through the book. Perhaps it was because his cultivation had risen, but Qin Yu's memory had also strengthened. After a moment, he was able to remember the approximate contents of the book. In particular, he clearly remembered the descriptions of the pills. This cultivator, surnamed Su's cultivation wasn't high, so he could only refine low-level pills. This was exactly what Qin Yu needed, so he was able to judge the pills in his hands. But he didn't lower his guard. He took out several different pill books and flipped through them. After confirming that there weren't too many discrepancies, he finally determined the names of the 3 pills. In order, they were the essence augmenting pill, the body tempering pill, and the fasting pill. The essence augmenting pill was similar to the minor spirit pill in that they were both pills used to increase one's cultivation. But the rank was a level higher and the medicinal efficacy was much stronger. The main function of the body tempering pill was to strengthen one's blood vitality and increase the intensity of one's mortal body. It also had the effect of increasing one's cultivation. The fasting pill was just like its name. After swallowing one wouldn't need to eat for an entire month. Chinyu smiled. There was no need to mention the essence augmenting pill. It was absolutely a good thing. The body tempering pill would also be of great use to him. It seemed that before long, his frail body would be able to change. As for the fasting pill, spiritual energy would enter his body when he refined the pill, so he wouldn't feel hungry. But once he finished refining the pill, it might come in handy. This harvest was quite satisfactory. Whatever, he would continue cultivating. But this time, Chinyu didn't swallow the essence augmenting pill. Instead, he chose the body tempering pill. The reason was simple. A energy refining realm cultivator's magic power was weak and he hadn't studied any offensive magic arts. If he encountered any danger, he would have to rely on his body to fight for his life, first enhancing his mortal body and then cultivating his magic power. This could be considered an additional layer of protection. Although there weren't any dangers in the pill disposal department, Chinyu still had a deep suspicion buried in his heart. The body tempering pill was truly worthy of being called an indispensable divine pill for any energy refining realm cultivator. Its effects on transforming the mortal body could be called terrifying. 10 days later, after refining all 44 body tempering pills, Chinyu had grown half a head taller. His muscles were streamlined and he bid farewell to his previous thin and frail appearance. His entire body was filled with explosive strength. If Lang too were to know of this, he would definitely cry out loud. Just how much pain had he suffered to reach his current physique? Now, he might not even be able to compare with Chinyu. Chinyu was all smiles. He secretly decided that he would find some way to give some body tempering pills to Lang too in the future. This fellow's head was filled with muscles. It was impossible for him to walk the orthodox path of cultivation. Body tempering was far more suitable for him. With the little blue lamp, Chinyu believed that he would be able to walk far, far down the road of cultivation. If he didn't have a friend to accompany him, wouldn't he be lonely? Potato was his lifelong good brother. In the dark underground, in the absolutely tranquil environment, time seemed to flow much faster. When Chinyu awoke from his cultivation once more, he had already been in the pill disposal department for an entire month. All of the essence tempering pills had been transformed into magic power. His cultivation had reached the astonishing 8th level of energy refining. In a single month, he had broken through to the 6th level of energy refining. To a cultivator, pills are truly the greatest gift the heavens can bestow upon them. Chinyu couldn't help but sigh. This chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page. He sighed. He could already confirm that the reason his 3rd senior apprentice brother was able to break through to the 7th level of energy refining in 27 days and smoothly step into foundation establishment was because he had the little blue lamp. Unfortunately, he had been too flamboyant. He had risen like a meteor and also fallen like a meteor. The gun will shoot the bird that sticks out. Wei Wei's death is right in front of me. I have to remember this and constantly remind myself of this. Chinyu's eyes were solemn. The existence of the little blue lamp would become his greatest secret. He could not reveal it at any time. Otherwise, let alone a small and insignificant energy refining cultivator like him, even a great supreme elder would be torn to shreds by it. After using up all of the pills, Chinyu's cultivation temporarily came to an end. After staying underground for a month in an absolutely sealed-off state, He didn't feel bored at all. His lips curved up in a smile. It looks like I'm not completely useless in cultivation. At least I can withstand loneliness. Just as his voice fell, Qin Yu's eyebrows arched up. His eyes reflected a dazzling light. It's actually you, you little thing. What appeared in front of him was the chicken overlord he had brought into the pill disposal department. On that day, he had released it in a moment of nervousness. Afterwards, Qin Yu had focused on his cultivation and had long since forgotten about its existence. At this time, the chicken overlord's bright feathers had lost their original luster. Its fiery red crown drooped down, and its small eyes were dim. It had a listless and dispirited appearance. It looked at Qin Yu. It wanted to approach, but it was also afraid, so it hesitated. Qin Yu immediately understood the reason. He lifted his hand and looked at his left index finger. Sure enough, the ghostly green had turned a bit darker. The pill disposal department was filled with pill toxins. A month was more than enough time for the toxins to accumulate and erupt. He carried the little blue lamp with him, so he was immune to the toxins. But the chicken overlord didn't have such luck. Even after a month, it hadn't died. Amongst wild chickens, its talent was bound to be extraordinary. It was truly worthy of its name as an overlord. Qin Yu thought for a moment. He reached into his chest and slowly opened it. A foot of ghostly blue light bloomed. As he looked at the chicken overlord, its eyes widened, revealing a look of excitement. Its claws anxiously scratched the ground, but it resisted the urge to rush over. This little thing actually had a bit of spiritual wisdom. Qin Yu was surprised for a moment before he composed himself. The world was vast, and there were all sorts of strange things. If he could obtain the little blue lamp, then why wouldn't it be possible for the chicken overlord to have developed a bit of spiritual wisdom? He originally saved it because he wanted it to accompany him. Now that the chicken overlord had developed a bit of spiritual wisdom, that was even better. Little fellow, come over here. I'll help you dispel the poison. As if it understood, the chicken overlord's eyes rolled up and it plopped to the ground. It fainted. Qin, you didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. It seemed that this little fellow had already noticed him and hadn't dared to come over. If so, then its spiritual wisdom wasn't too low. He walked over and picked up the chicken overlord, bathing it in the light of the little blue lamp. Faint traces of black energy rushed towards its claws, gradually turning them black. He pinched it with his fingers. It was plump, and from the feel of it, it seemed to be much heavier than when it came in. Qin Yu rubbed his chin, a thoughtful look on his face. During this month, he hadn't seen the chicken overlord come down. Just what had it been eating? The black energy stopped surging, and the poison had been dispelled. The chicken overlord's eyes were tightly shut, without any intention of waking up. But since you fainted, why are those long feathers on your tail trembling? Qin Yu deliberately weighed it in his hand. He diabolically grinned. It's quite fat. Now that the poison has been dispelled, it's perfect for a stew. Flap, flap, flap. The chicken overlord fiercely struggled. If it weren't for the fact that Qin Yu was prepared, he really might have let it escape. After struggling for a while, the chicken overlord discovered that its hands were like two iron hoops. It looked at Qin Yu with pitiful eyes, tears falling down its cheeks. This little thing, it had really become a spirit. Chicken spirit? This name was inexplicably funny. Qin Yu's lips curved up in a smile. The chicken overlord immediately became spirited and began to act cute. But it was fine if it flapped its wings. But why were the feathers on its tail shaking like a windmill? Chapter 6. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. All right, if I really wanted to eat you, I wouldn't even need to detoxify you. Love, go small. Say, Net kachin you let go. The chicken overlord flapped its wings, but it didn't fly too far before it returned with a dejected look on its face. Qin Yu smiled. You're smart. This place is filled with pill poison. Without my help, where can you run to? The chicken overlord spun around like a windmill, looking as if it didn't understand what Lin Ming was saying. Qin Yu didn't want to lower himself to its level. He went straight to the point. Let me ask you, where have you been hiding this past month, and what have you been eating? Don't try to lie to me. Of course, if you're tired of living, you can ignore my kind reminder. The chicken overlord's small eyes were originally spinning around, but as it heard Lin Ming's words, it froze. It helplessly cried out twice and stretched out its wings, pointing towards the exit. Qin Yu frowned. He had never heard a chicken cry like this before. It was sharp and grating, just like an old crow. But now wasn't the time to think about these things. From the chicken overlord's reaction, it should have found something. Lead the way. Climbing up the stone steps, the chicken overlord flapped its wings at an extremely fast speed. Luckily, after taking the body tempering pill, Qin Yu was no longer the same as before. He easily followed behind. Soon they arrived at the exit. The mottled bloodstains on the ground and the stone walls once again appeared before their eyes, causing them to feel a heavy pressure on their chest. Qin Yu looked around and didn't discover anything. Then his eyes fell on the chicken overlord, a questioning look in them. The little creature proudly croaked twice and spread its wings to fly up. It circled above its head and drilled into a hole in the stone wall with a whoosh. Soon its cry came from the hole. Qin Yu's complexion changed. He never imagined that there would be another world within the hole that these people dug. He walked forward and extended his hand into the cave. About 2 feet in, he discovered another cave. This cave was actually curved. In the dark environment, it was impossible to see it from the outside. Luckily, he had the chicken overlord. Otherwise, even if he lived in the drug disposal department for 100 years, he still might not be able to find this place. Where does the hole lead to? Qin Yu thought for a moment and then moved to the side. Soon, the chicken overlord drilled out, holding a plant seed in its beak. It obediently placed it in his hand. After twisting it, he found that it was very dry and the surface layer had not completely fallen off. Obviously, it was a newly formed seed. As he sniffed the air, he could faintly smell the fragrance of earth. His eyes brightened. Obviously, the space connected by the holes could be used to grow plants. To think that there was such a place deep underground where the disposal department was located. No matter how one looked at it, it was definitely extraordinary. He had to go in. However, this hole, Qin Yu revealed a helpless expression. The chicken overlord paced back and forth, its face full of arrogance. Its small eyes swept over Qin Yu from time to time, a trace of smug satisfaction in them. It was as if the words were written all over his face. So what if I tell you, you can't come in? Quack, quack, of course. If you ask me how Gua 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 could tell, I can only irresponsibly tell you that I guessed it. Qin Yu's eyes turned icy cold. He crooked a finger at the chicken overlord and gloomily said, If you want to live, then be obedient and listen to me. Even though the chicken overlord had developed its own spiritual wisdom, it was still the same as a 5 or 6-year-old child. Under Qin Yu's threat, it could only obediently do manual labor. It flew in and out again and again, following Qin Yu's instructions and gesturing what it saw. The comprehension abilities of a chicken and a youth were naturally different. The process could be said to be tortuous and difficult. At the start, the chicken overlord was able to look down at Qin Yu with a condescending and arrogant expression. But afterwards it was so tired that its eyes rolled back in its head and it could only gasp for breath. Qin Yu took a stone and drew on the ground. According to the information he obtained, he constantly revised it, his eyes becoming increasingly bright. Now he could determine that this hole was connected to a crack that slanted downwards. Below it was the mysterious space where the plants grew. According to the angle analysis, direction judgment, and approximate distance estimation, this chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page. This was because this place wasn't too far from the disposal department. In other words, there was a high chance that there was an entrance to the disposal department. Picking up the exhausted chicken overlord that was lying on the ground with its tongue hanging out, Qin Yu strode back to the disposal department. His eyes slowly swept around until they finally fell on the entrance to the bedroom. Without a doubt, this stone room was the place closest to the mysterious space. Besides, when he first arrived, Chi knew hadn't come here again. As he swept his eyes around, he couldn't help but frown. Although it was a bedroom, there was only a stone bed and a stone table. There were also several low stone stools on the side that had long since been damaged. Qin Yu put down the chicken overlord. Starting from the entrance, he began to gently knock on the stone walls, trying to determine whether or not there was a secret passage within. But as he continued to knock, he found that the stone walls were solid without the slightest hole. It was clear that there wasn't a secret passage here. He lifted up the dirty bed and continued to knock on it, but he still didn't find anything. Besides that, there was only the ground. But the ground had been polished smooth without any blind spots. If there really was a secret passage, it would have been discovered long ago. Why would they wait until today? Qin Yu frowned. Could his judgment have been wrong? But according to his calculations, the crack really did extend towards this location. He sat down on a stone stool and gently tapped the table. He inadvertently saw a dent on the table. From the looks of it, it should have been caused by someone smashing a stone stool into it. In the corner of the bedroom, there were several broken stone stool fragments that confirmed this. This stone table was truly hard. It had smashed a stone stool into several pieces, but only a small piece of the table itself had broken off. Subconsciously thinking of this, Qin Yu's expression suddenly changed. He stood up and took several steps back, looking around. The stone table was polished from a single piece of stone. Looking at the traces around it, it hadn't been moved for countless years, as if it were connected to the ground. But this table was a bit too big. If he didn't have any suspicions, then this table wouldn't be too conspicuous in the bedroom. But once he did, he couldn't help but think that if even the study room was filled with shabby tables and chairs, then wouldn't it be strange to place such a fine stone table in the bedroom? Qin Yu stared at the stone table, his eyes growing increasingly bright. He had to thank his third senior apprentice brother for leaving behind so many body-tempering pills. Otherwise, even if he found some clues, with his previous body, he would have been helpless. He grabbed the stone table with both hands and shouted out loud. His muscles instantly tensed up. After taking the body-tempering pills, this was the first time he had used his full strength. According to his estimations, his current strength was no less than that of a galloping horse. But this galloping horse's strength only caused the stone table to gently shake. Then, no matter how much strength he used, he couldn't move it at all. It was like it really was growing on the ground. Hoochie! Hoochie! Qin Yu gasped for breath, sweat streaming down his face. There was a bit of helplessness on his face, but even more excitement. Originally, it was only a suspicion, but now he was almost certain that there was a passage to that mysterious space hidden beneath the stone table. After a moment, his breathing stabilized. Qin Yu sneered and turned to leave. This was only a stone table to his left and right. It wouldn't dodge or fight back. Even if it was hard, could it really stop him? He pushed open the heavy stone door and held his breath. His eyes swept around, and he picked out a black iron rod. It was extremely heavy, likely 200 to 300 jeans in weight. Even with the little blue lamp in hand, Qin Yu didn't want to stay in a place that dealt with waste pills for too long. He turned and left. After returning to his bedroom, Qin Yu tore off a large piece of cloth and wrapped it around one end of the iron rod. Then, with a loud shout, he smashed it down. Bang! With a loud explosion, the iron rod violently bounced up. It trembled and hummed. Qin Yu's arms went numb, nearly finding it hard to hold onto it. But the effect of this rod was also amazing. A mark appeared on the surface of the stone table, with tiny cracks all around. After a brief rest, Qin Yu waved his hand and smashed down again. Bang! Bang! Dull explosions rang out. Luckily, he was deep underground, so he didn't need to worry about others noticing. No matter how hard the stone table was, facing Qin Yu's unreasonable methods, it could only angrily turn into crushed stone. When there was only a 2-foot-long stone table base left on the ground, this chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page. On the platform, Qin Yu threw down the iron rod and grabbed it with both hands. Kacha! Kacha! The sound of friction left one's scalp tingling. The stone table base was like a bamboo shoot that was pulled up from the ground and tossed to the side. Hoo! A gust of wind blew up from the ground, stirring up some dust. Qin Yu narrowed his eyes as he smelled a sweet fragrance. A black hole appeared in front of him, extending downwards. There was a faint light at the end. But to Qin Yu, this was more than enough. He swept his eyes around and saw a man-made staircase. Although it was simple and crude, it caused his heartbeat to accelerate. The chicken overlord had already determined that there were no dangers in this mysterious space. Without hesitation, Qin Yu pushed himself into the entrance and climbed down the staircase. After descending a dozen meters, he reached the end of the staircase. Qin Yu looked down. He was 3 or 4 meters from the ground. It wasn't enough to cause him any harm. He loosened his hands, and in the next moment, he steadily landed on the ground. Looking around, even though Qin Yu was mentally prepared, he was still stunned where he was. This was an underground space that was around a mile wide. For some unknown reason, there was a very deep layer of soil here that had been opened up and many herbs had been planted here. This was a small medicine field. Because it had been neglected for many years, the medicine field was covered in a thick layer of leaves, seeds, and even withered roots. There were also several attractive fruits lying on the ground, exuding a tantalizing fragrance. Although Qin Yu was only a minor outer court energy refining cultivator, he was lucky that his work area was near the medicine field. After 7 years of being influenced by what he had seen and heard, he was able to recognize almost all of the spirit grasses that were being cultivated in the medicine field. Now, as he swept his eyes around, he could see snake orchids, 1,000 safflower flowers, azure cloud vines, earth lotus seeds, and all sorts of other precious spirit grasses. Moreover, each one was extremely old and was no worse than the treasures of the Eastern Mountain Sect's medicine field. This medicine field that was 1,000 feet wide was a living treasure trove. But in the next moment, Qin Yu's face became incomparably fierce. He turned and roared, "You bastard, I will kill you!" A certain pheasant that saw that the situation was far from good had long since fled without a trace, hiding somewhere unknown. Qin Yu finally knew why the chicken overlord had developed its spiritual wisdom and why it was able to gain weight even after staying in an environment filled with pill toxins for a month. This damned fool, it was actually eating these precious spirit grasses as a meal. Just now, he had only taken a quick glance in excitement and hadn't been able to clearly see what was happening. But now that he looked carefully, Qin Yu's heart ached so much that he nearly fainted. The fruit lying on the ground should be the jade cloud fruit. From flowering to fruiting to ripening, it took at least 60 years to do so. It was a natural healing treasure that had amazing effects on bodily injuries. It could even regenerate limbs. In the Eastern Mountain Sect's medicine field, there were 2 that bore fruit. These fruits could block out snow in winter and rain in summer. In spring and autumn, they were fertilized and weeded. They were almost worshipped as ancestors. But now, these fruits had been mostly eaten up and were lying on the ground, nearly rotting away. All that was left over was a shiny outer layer. As for the snake orchids, they had already taken the shape of a python and had grown for at least 400 years. There might not even be a single spirit grass of this level in the entire Eastern Mountain Sect. It was an absolutely priceless treasure. Now, all that was left over was a bare pole. The most important part of the grass had been nearly eaten clean, leaving behind only a few lonely pieces, all of them broken and broken. The earth lotus seed was a spirit plant bred from the thick aura of the earth. Putting aside its use in refining pills, it was in itself a treasure that could calm the mind and purify the mind. To a Buddhist cultivator, it was an incomparably precious treasure. But at this time the several lotus thrones were empty, as if they had been crossed by bandits. Qin Yu covered his forehead with his hand and closed his eyes, not daring to look any further. He was afraid that he would faint, and he was even more afraid that he wouldn't be able to control his anger and turn around to grab the chicken overlord and tear it to pieces. But he soon reacted. These destroyed spirit grasses and spirit plants were still emitting spiritual strength. If he delayed any longer, he feared that they really would become a pile of waste. Qin Yu wordlessly rushed in, carefully searching. His heart twitched from time to time as he was stabbed again and again. Chapter 7. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go. This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. An hour later, there were over a dozen spirit grasses, over 20 fruits, and 8 or 9 flower petals shimmering with spiritual energy in front of him. It was unknown how many years the 1,000-foot medicinal field had been growing for and how many treasures it could have produced. But now there was only this much left. Qin Yu clenched his teeth, but soon he sighed. If it weren't for the chicken overlord, he wouldn't have discovered the medicinal field even if it was still here. If he thought about it this way, then the reason he had these harvests now was all thanks to that idiot's luck. Thinking of this, Qin Yu calmed down a great deal. He carefully gathered these things together and placed them to the side. He turned and washed his hands. Then he scooped up a handful of spring water. It was unexpectedly sweet and refreshing. Moreover, what was even more astonishing was that this spring water contained a faint trace of spiritual strength. Qin Yu's eyes lit up. He sighed inwardly at the wonders of the world's good fortune. There was a natural spring at the side of the underground medicinal field, and there should be an extremely small spirit vein at the bottom of the spring. The spiritual energy fused into the spring water and was absorbed by the spirit grasses and plants in the medicinal field, accelerating their growth. With so many coincidences, this underground medicinal field could be called a miracle. A paradise, a paradise, a paradise, a paradise. Putting aside how to deal with pill toxins, this is also an excellent place to cultivate. Qin Yu looked up at the grass hut at the edge of the space. I wonder which senior is cultivating here and why he would appear here. The chicken overlord had already brought back news that someone had once lived in this mysterious space. The broken illumination array formation on the stone walls also confirmed this. However, the master of this place should have either left or died. He pushed open the door and entered. Qin Yu swept his eyes around. There was a skeleton sitting on a broken praying mat. From the looks of it, it should have died on its own. There were 3 jade slips placed in front of the skeleton. They were covered in a thick layer of dust and seemed incomparably dim. Besides these jade slips, there was nothing else in the grass hut. Looking at the color of the skeleton, this person should have died several hundred years ago. Qin Yu straightened his clothes and bowed, disregarding how long he had died. Just the medicinal field outside was worthy of this bow. He walked forwards and bent down to pick up a jade slip. This was the first time Qin Yu had seen such a high-level item of the cultivation world. After hesitating for a moment, he carefully placed the jade slip on his forehead and probed it with his weak divine sense. There was a letter within the jade slip. Of course, it would be more appropriate to call it his last words. It was left behind by this person before he passed away, and the contents were as follows. My name is Tsang Mengzi. I inadvertently obtained a legacy and stepped onto the path of cultivation. I am a wandering cultivator, and I have spent my entire life immersed in the Tao of alchemy. I've heard that the East Peak sect of the Southern Empire is overseen by a Pale Tao expert, so I've traveled tens of thousands of kilometers to exchange pointers with him. However, this action brought disaster upon this old man. I will be trapped underground until I die of old age. The content was long and detailed, but the general gist was that this Tsang Mengzi had come to the Eastern Mountain sect to exchange alchemy techniques. He had managed to win by a fluke, but he had fallen into a trap and was thrown underground. Originally, in a land ravaged by pill toxins, he would have died without a doubt. But the ancestors of the Eastern Mountain sect didn't know that Song Mengzi had a poison-absorbing body. Although the pill toxins were terrifying, they weren't able to take his life. Song Mengzi managed to survive. But at that time, the Eastern Mountain sect had been glorious for a time, and they had a nascent soul, realm great master guarding them. Moreover, the array formation they had set up was cruel and vicious, only allowing entry and not exit. Thus, he could only be trapped here. It had to be said that this person was a rare alchemy genius. He had blazed a new path and found a way to decompose waste pills and extract raw materials, using them to refine pills. Of course, these extracted materials would more or less be contaminated with pill toxins. If swallowed too many of them, even someone with a poison-absorbing body wouldn't be able to withstand it. It was also because of this that Song Mengzi was unable to make a breakthrough in his cultivation and eventually passed away in meditation. This underground space was inadvertently discovered by Song Mengzi, and he was also the one who planted the medicine fields. But in the end, it was all given to the chicken overlord. If he knew of this, he probably wouldn't know whether to laugh or cry. Moreover, the jade slip also mentioned that he had left behind some insights into alchemy as well as a treasure furnace. He hoped that a fated person would be able to make good use of them, but there was nothing in this thatched hut. The jade slip was right in front of him. So where did the treasure furnace come from? Could it be that this senior Song Mengzi had lost his consciousness before he died? Qin, this chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page. Yu shook his head and laid down the jade slip. Although he had consumed a great deal of his divine sense, he still couldn't help but pick up the second jade slip. Sure enough, there were all sorts of detailed alchemy methods, pill recipes, as well as exquisite alchemy techniques inside. Qin Yu was overjoyed. Moreover, what left him even more satisfied was that there was a medicine codex attached to the back of this jade slip. The medicine codex's content surpassed his imagination. As its name suggested, it recorded the countless spirit grasses and plants of the world. Not only were there detailed introductions and beautiful illustrations, but what was even more amazing was that there were even instructions on how to grow and maintain them. The medicine codex was like an encyclopedia of spirit grasses and plants. Its value was self-evident. Perhaps this was the inheritance that Song Mengzi had inadvertently obtained in his early years. Song Mengzi had a talent for alchemy and had even obtained a formidable inheritance. He was someone with a great destiny and had the foundation to become a ruler of a region. But in the end, he had died underground, his corpse unable to be buried. The difference between Song Mengzi and Wei Wei was that he had underestimated the sinister nature of the human heart. Thus he had fallen into such a situation. Without a doubt, this was another profound lesson for Qin Yu, who had just stepped into the world of cultivation. As Qin Yu probed the last jade slip with his divine sense, it absorbed a wisp of his divine sense. It shined for a moment before fading away. Qin Yu thought about it for a moment and realized that this jade slip should be some sort of status symbol. After Song Mengzi died, his aura had dissipated, but now his aura had been imprinted within. This was an unintentional mistake, but with things having come this far, he could only put away the jade slip. Luckily, unless he took it out himself, no one else would see it, so it shouldn't provoke any trouble. Moreover, he had received Song Mengzi's legacy today. If he had a chance in the future, he might be able to use this jade slip to find his family and juniors and repay them. He crushed Song Mengzi's last words, jade slip, and carefully put away the other two. This was to avoid unnecessary trouble. Qin Yu bowed. Senior Song Mengzi, this junior has no way to repay you today. I can only bury your remains so that you can rest in peace. I apologize for offending you. The ground was thick. Without using too much strength, Qin Yu dug a deep square pit in the thatched hut. He carefully moved the skeleton and placed it into the pit. At this time, there was a light paw-paw sound as 2 beads fell to the ground. Qin Yu's pupils shrank, but his movements didn't stop. He continued to move the skeleton until he completely buried the pit. Then he bowed once more and picked up the 2 beads. Of these 2 beads, one was ash white and covered with cracks, but looking at it, one could see a faint golden light. The other was pitch black, as if it were condensed from ink. Its surface was smooth and glossy, and it emitted a dim light. What was this? Just as Chinyu thought this, he froze. The dark light on the black bead in his hand condensed into a ghostly face that bit into his hand, sinking deep into his bones. Billowing black energy surged into Chinyu's body like a broken dam. There was also a chaotic and cruel will that rushed into his mind. This black energy was poison. This bead was formed by Tsang Mangzi's poison-accepting body. It had lived for hundreds of years and had absorbed all sorts of poisons. Tsang Mangzi had died, but it had survived. In these past years, it had gradually developed a rudimentary consciousness. It was a pure consciousness of poison, cruel and destructive. It was true that Chinyu had the little blue lamp that made him impervious to all poisons, but that was only when he released the sea blue lamp at night. It was useless during the day. Thus, in just an instant, his body had been occupied by the poison. If it weren't for his cultivation rising to the 8th level of energy refining and him taking a massive number of body-tempering pills, he would have already died. Even so, he was only able to last for several more breaths of time, suffering even more pain. Soreness, pain, itchiness, numbness, all sorts of sensations surged up, submerging Chinyu's consciousness. Compared to this, the beating he suffered because of the medicine garden accident was nothing more than a tickle. But the affairs of the world were wondrous like this. What seemed like several breaths of useless struggle on the verge of death had actually saved Chinyu's life. The cracked ash white bead in his hand suddenly burst out with a blinding golden light. This chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page. Deep within this golden light, one could see a blurry figure sitting down. The golden light was like a needle. It pierced into Chinyu's body, suppressing everything. In the underground space, a powerful pressure surged out like a tide, rising and falling. Golden core! Golden core! This bead was actually the golden core left behind by Tsang Mangzi after he died. Chinyu froze in place like a statue. The violent poison and cruel will raging within his body were nailed to the ground, unable to move. But he didn't give up resisting. Like a trapped beast, he crazily counterattacked, colliding with the power of the golden light. All of this occurred within Chinyu's body. It was like countless knives were crazily cutting into every inch of his flesh and blood. This sort of pain surpassed the limits of what a youth could withstand. His blood vessels bulged out, and he opened his mouth wide, but no sound came out. Chinyu wanted to faint, but he couldn't do so in this pain. Instead, his consciousness became even clearer. It was also at this time that some inexplicable memories began to appear in his mind, gradually becoming clear. These were Tsang Mangzi's memories. Whether it was the poison bead or the golden core, they were both things that came from Tsang Mangzi's body and naturally contained his aura. At this time, the shock waves of the battle were absorbed by Chinyu, transforming into some scenes. When Tsang Mangzi died in the past, the poison bead and golden core had mutually balanced each other out. It was because of this that the strength of the poison bead didn't erupt. Otherwise, the Eastern Mountain sect that had fallen into decline would have become a land of death several hundred years ago. Because of this, the golden core was stimulated and instinctively absorbed the spiritual strength of the heavens and earth to suppress the poison bead. Thus, it didn't disperse and was preserved to this day. Time passed. To Chinyu, every second was incomparably long. In this torturous pain, it seemed as if tens of thousands of years had passed. Night finally arrived. As if sensing Chinyu's condition, a foot of sea blue light appeared in front of his chest. The pure blue light was dazzling. The poison bead trembled. The chaotic will that broke into Chinyu's body instinctively screamed before vanishing from sight. It was like it had been instantly torn to pieces by an invisible hand. The ghostly face on the poison bead collapsed. turning into a black current that wildly poured into Qin Yu's body. Or, to be more precise, it was forcefully drawn out. The black current passed through Qin Yu's body and gathered on his right index finger. The ghostly green knuckles rapidly turned black. The toxicity of the phosphorescence symbol couldn't be compared to the toxins that Song Mangzi had absorbed for his entire life. After several breaths of time, with a light cracking sound, the poison bead shattered into a pile of powder. Qin Yu's body softened, and he fell to the ground. Hoo! Hoo! He violently gasped for breath, his entire body collapsing. His robes were instantly soaked with sweat. The poison bead shattered, and the toxins vanished. The golden light that burst out from the golden core rapidly retreated, and the powerful pressure in the air dissipated with it. Kacha! With another light sound, a crack appeared on the surface of the golden core. It returned to its original grayish-white appearance, as unremarkable as a pebble on a riverside. If one hadn't seen this scene with their own eyes, who would have believed that this was the golden core of a peak golden core master that had already stepped into the hollow nascent realm? Previously, the figure that appeared in the golden light was the manifestation of the false nascent soul realm, which meant that the nascent soul would not be achieved in a day. The memories he obtained allowed him to have a clear understanding of this golden core. His lips twitched, and he bitterly smiled. Song Mangzi's golden core was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Suppressing the poison bead had exhausted the last of its strength. It could be considered a complete waste. Of course, in terms of usefulness, it still had some uses. For instance, a fox exploiting the might of a tiger. By pouring magic power into the golden core, it could release the aura and pressure of the golden core realm. But it could only be used once before it completely collapsed. He had nearly lost his life and suffered the pain of being fried in a sea of oil. But he had obtained a hollow nascent soul golden core, and yet it only had this use left. Qin Yu didn't know whether he should laugh at his narrow escape from death or cry at his own bad luck. Chapter 8. Genius in a Second. Remember love, go away. This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. Luckily, it wasn't like he didn't obtain anything. The poison within the poison pill had been completely extracted by the little blue lamp and suppressed into the tip of his right index finger. If he were to be directly touched, then with the terror of the poison pill, even a golden core realm master wouldn't be able to escape. It could be considered a great killing tool, but as he thought about it, he bitterly smiled. It was true that the poison pill was fierce, but if he wanted to use this poison, he would need to walk to the side and touch a person. If he really were to become enemies with a golden core realm master, they could casually wave their hand and he would die without a grave. Where would he find a chance to approach? This thing was of little value to him. It's better than nothing. Maybe I can use it in the future. Qin Yu comforted himself as he looked around. Suddenly his eyes froze. He took several steps forwards and dug out a palm-sized bag from the weeds on the ground. It was soft to the touch and didn't seem to be woven. Rather, it seemed to be some kind of animal skin. The bag was tied with gold and silver threads. As Qin Yu carefully opened it, he froze. Storage bag. It was actually a storage bag. He sucked in a breath of cold air. His heart raced like a drum. After carefully probing it with his divine sense, he found that there was a space of around 10 feet inside. This was indeed a storage bag. In the entire Eastern Mountain sect, there were no more than 3 such high-level cultivator items. The 10 feet of space wasn't too large, and the quality of a storage bag was only average. But to Qin Yu, this was an unimaginable treasure. It had to be known that a storage bag was a treasure that only a golden core realm powerhouse had the qualifications to use. Qin Yu took several deep breaths, barely managing to suppress the tumbling emotions in his heart. After carefully inspecting the storage bag and making sure it was intact, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. Luck, this was luck. But if it was reversed, this was destiny. He had obtained the little blue lamp and found Song Mangzi's remains. All of these things were destiny. However, destiny was often accompanied by ferociousness. This could be seen from Qin Yu's recent experiences. But right now, Qin Yu didn't care about any of this. His mind was filled with joy from obtaining the storage bag. Perhaps it was because Song Mangzi had spared no cost to extend his lifespan before he died, but the storage bag was empty. Wait, that wasn't right. There were two other things. With a thought, a black robe appeared in Qin Yu's hand. It seemed to be made of some sort of ice silk and was cold to the touch. If it was collected by a hollow nascent soul realm powerhouse, then it was clear that this black robe wasn't ordinary at all. He lifted a hand and put it on. The black robes were massive, and he wore a hood that covered his entire body. Qin Yu immediately discovered that his divine sense couldn't pass through the black robes. This robe was clearly a treasure used to conceal his identity and aura. In the future, if he did not wish to be seen by others, black robe was undoubtedly the best choice. The second item was a medicinal cauldron the size of a palm. The surface of the cauldron was inscribed with heavenly lightning and earthly fire, and there were many mysterious patterns on it. Clearly, it was an alchemy treasure. This must be the treasure furnace that Song Mangzi had mentioned in his final words. But this treasure could only be used after being refined, so he couldn't see just how mystical it was right now. Suppressing his desire to immediately refine it, he took off the black robe and placed it and the cauldron back into his storage bag. Then he carefully searched through the thatched hut once more, but unfortunately, he didn't find anything else. Just the storage bag alone is an unimaginable harvest. How can I be greedy? Qin Yu was secretly vigilant. His eyes fell on Song Mangzi's grave, a complex look in them. When this person died in meditation, he already had a false nascent soul cultivation. Without accident, he would have made a breakthrough soon and reached the nascent soul realm. At that time, his lifespan would have increased by 800 years, and he would have been able to overcome this crisis. Unfortunately, he lacked a bit of destiny and died like this. If Song Mangzi had survived in the past, the Eastern Mountain sect would have suffered a calamity, and Qin Yu wouldn't have had the lucky chance he had today. Qin Yu shook his head, suppressing his thoughts. He cupped his hands together and said, "This junior will be taking his leave." He turned and left the thatched hut. Looking around, he keenly discovered a little thing that was poking its head out not too far away. This chapter isn't over. Please turn to the next page. Qin Yu sneered again and again. Didn't you run away? You actually dared to come back. The chicken overlord's head drooped. If it could speak, it would definitely be stamping its feet and cursing out loud. If it wasn't afraid of poison, then it would be an idiot to come back. Qin Yu beckoned with his finger. The chicken overlord shuffled over. Its small eyes were bright and watery, and its tail was wagging in joy. Qin Yu laughed. "Stop teasing me. Let's write off everything from before. After all, I can be considered to have benefited from your light." Qin Yu walked over to the spirit grasses, spirit plants, and spirit fruits. Seeing that none of them were missing, a trace of satisfaction appeared on his face. He placed them in his storage bag and placed a spirit fruit in his palm. "This is for you. Eat it." The chicken overlord immediately became spirited. It flapped its wings and quickly ate up the spirit fruit, its eyes narrowing in satisfaction. Qin Yu kicked it. "Stop enjoying yourself. Come with me to verify something. Otherwise, you'll be trapped here for the rest of your life. So what if you don't die?" His voice gradually lowered, as if he were reminding himself. In Song Mangzi's last words, he had mentioned that the Eastern Mountain sect's pill disposal department's array formation was incomparably cruel and sinister. Qin Yu had never forgotten this. Moreover, in his memories, there really wasn't anyone who could appear in front of others after entering the pill disposal department. Qin Yu leapt up the cave entrance and crawled back to the pill disposal department. He hurried to the exit and took out the entry token, pouring magic power into it. His robes fluttered without wind. Qin Yu stuffily coughed. It was like an iron needle had stabbed into his mind and his vision darkened. His magic power at the 8th level of energy refining was instantly sucked dry, but the array formation at the exit didn't show any signs of opening. His magic power was like a stone sinking into the sea. He really couldn't leave. Qin Yu drew back several steps and leaned against a stone wall. His pale face revealed a trace of fear and despair. In the end, he was still a young man. No matter how much he forced himself to appear calm, he would still fall into chaos when he encountered a hopeless situation. In the past, Song Mangzi had a golden core realm cultivation, but he still hadn't been able to escape after being trapped here. As for Qin Yu, he was only at the energy refining realm. The difference between them was as far as the heavens and earth. He feared he would never be able to leave in this life. No wonder there were so many bloodstains at the exit of the pill disposal department, as well as signs of manual labor. It must have been caused by the cultivators that were sent here. After discovering that they couldn't leave, they must have fallen into despair. He couldn't panic. Qin Yu took several deep breaths. His eyes became firm and tenacious. He didn't believe he would die here. As he closed his eyes to rest, he began to regret swallowing all the pills he had. Luckily, there weren't any dangers here, and he had plenty of time. For hours later, Qin Yu opened his eyes. He lifted a hand and took out a jade slip. This was Song Mangzi's insights into alchemy. He found the part about breaking down waste pills to obtain materials. Qin Yu carefully studied it. After a long time, he lowered his hands, a bitter expression on his face. Although he could understand it and had memorized all the steps, so what if he knew the methods of a golden core cultivator? He couldn't use them at all. Qin Yu clenched his teeth. He put away the jade slip and pushed himself up. He glanced at the exit and then turned to go back underground. Now, there was only one possibility left. If it was useless, then perhaps Qin Yu shook his head and shook off the beads of sweat. His expression was firm. So what if he failed? If Song Mangzi could hide underground for several hundred years and search for a chance to escape, then he could do the same. He pushed open the heavy stone door. Qin Yu's eyes fell onto the black furnace that connected the top of the stone chamber to the bottom. This furnace had existed for countless years and was built during the peak of the Eastern Mountain sect. It could absorb the destructive power of earth fire and destroy the waste pills that had accumulated within. The upper channel was the entrance to the waste pills, and the lower channel was where the destructive power of earth fire came from. Even Song Mangzi didn't dare to think of using this furnace to escape, so Qin Yu naturally wouldn't seek death. He looked at it several times and then grabbed onto the furnace's handrail. With a loud shout, his muscles tightened and the furnace slowly opened. Surging heat surged out. Qin Yu's sweat fell like rain, soaking his robes. But what was even more terrifying than the high temperature of the earth fire was the accompanying ash. If this chapter isn't finished, please turn the page. As the smoke touched his body, it directly fused into his flesh and blood. This was pill poison, but it wasn't pure pill poison. Rather, it was a mixture formed from the collision of the earth fire poison. The toxicity was terrifying. Luckily, it was nighttime. Beneath the foot-long sea blue light, all of the poison that invaded his body was instantly suppressed to his right knuckles. Perhaps Qin Yu was the first person to open a furnace and come out unscathed. He picked up a black shovel that had been lying around for countless years and thrust it into the bottom of the furnace. In just a breath of time, the edges of the shovel began to emit a red light. It was clear to see that the temperature inside was terrifyingly high. Qin Yu ignored the waves of heat rushing towards him. He looked down and saw that the shovel was covered in a thick layer of black ash. Nearly 100 waste pills had fallen onto it, most of them in a half-melted state. So many? Qin Yu was startled. He was a bit suspicious. How could the tiny Eastern Mountain sect have so many waste pills? It had to be known that every one of these pills consumed precious materials. But this thought disappeared as soon as it appeared. He didn't have the mind to care about such things right now. He fell to the ground and thrust the shovel in again, going back and forth 7 or 8 times. By now, The ground beneath his feet was covered with waste pills. There were likely 600 to 700 of them. The poison fog formed by pill poison and earth fire poison had already spread out, filling the room and blurring his vision. Bang! Qin Yu closed the furnace's mouth and stood there, slowly taking a deep breath and calming his mind. Even though he had prepared himself for the worst, he still couldn't help but be nervous. The poison fog in the furnace room gradually thinned. One could see that with Qin Yu as the center, the fog was constantly pouring into his body. When the last wisp of poison fog disappeared, he opened his eyes. He squatted down and took out the little blue lamp from his chest. He spread out his fingers, and a foot of sea blue light quietly bloomed, covering dozens of waste pills within. Success or failure, everything would be decided in this moment. Time slowly passed. Suddenly, Qin Yu's eyes brightened. He discovered that beneath the deep blue light, the temperature of the waste pills was rapidly falling. Soon, a thin layer of frost formed on the surface of the waste pills. As time passed, the frost didn't thicken, but the color gradually turned a light blue, as if it were the color of the diluted sea blue light. Kacha! Kacha! Countless cracking sounds entered Qin Yu's ears. In front of him, the waste pills seemed to be unable to withstand the low temperature and began to shatter. A portion of the particles directly evaporated, and only 2/3 of them were preserved. They were like tiny ice crystals. It was useful. Qin Yu was excited. He moved the little blue lamp to another pile of waste pills and stared at the shattered ice crystals. After separating from the blue light, their temperature began to rise. In just several breaths of time, they had turned into unremarkable little black balls. Qin Yu picked up several and licked them. His eyes became increasingly bright, and a look of ecstasy appeared on his face. He had succeeded. Although he didn't know what the materials were, he could tell just from the taste that these were pure alchemy materials. Moreover, one of them tasted sweet and sour, perfectly matching the taste of a minor spirit pill. This was the sour twig grass he needed to refine. With these materials, the alchemy technique and alchemy furnace left behind by Tsang Mengzi, as well as the little blue lamp that could enhance the quality of pills in this hopeless situation, Qin Yu finally had a path in front of him. It might be difficult, but as long as he persevered, there would be a chance. In the mountains, there was no sense of time. In the blink of an eye, cold turned to heat. In the training room, Qin Yu constantly formed law formulas with his hands. The alchemy furnace in front of him emitted surging fire energy. Suddenly, the fire energy emitted by the pill furnace became unstable, and there were muffled sounds coming from within. Qin Yu's complexion darkened. The speed of his hand seals instantly rose. In just 7 breaths of time, he formed 49 seals. His speed was so fast that his 10 fingers seemed to link together. Open furnace! With a loud shout, the pill furnace opened with a loud bang. A medicinal fragrance overflowed, and 7 beams of blue light shot into the skies. Qin Yu was already prepared. With a flick of his sleeves, he wrapped them up. He opened his hand. 7 pills lay peacefully in his palm. His face lit up with excitement as he waved his hand. Chapter 9. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go. Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. After dozens of failures, consuming countless materials and time, the Foundation Establishment Pill was finally concocted. Although he didn't want to admit it, he had to admit that Qin Yu's talent in alchemy was quite ordinary. Holding the alchemy notes of Tsang Mengzi, this great alchemy master, was the same as receiving all of his teachings. He also had the assistance of the fleeting flame cauldron, but his path of alchemy was still incomparably bumpy. If it weren't for the fact that the Eastern Mountain sect possessed an unimaginable number of waste pills that constantly provided him with materials, he wouldn't have had the qualifications to squander them, much less refine a top-grade spirit pill like the Foundation Establishment Pill. But no matter what, he succeeded, and that was enough. The foundation-building pill, as its name suggested, could help a 10th layer aura refining cultivator take another step forward and step into the foundation building realm. Although using the power of pills to make a breakthrough would be detrimental to his future cultivation and could even be said to be destroying his own foundation, he didn't care at all. His cultivation base was built up from the accumulation of medicinal pills. As for his foundation, he had never had it before. There were still 2 hours until nightfall. Qin Yu closed his eyes and began to meditate. When the foot-long sea blue light illuminated the darkness, once more, he opened his eyes and placed the 7 foundation establishment pills within. Illuminated by the deep blue light, Qin Yu's face became increasingly angular, filled with a heroic spirit. Perhaps it was because he never saw the sun all year round, but his skin was incomparably fair, reflecting the luster of ivory. A year of solitary cultivation had added a hint of restraint and tenacity to his temperament amidst the silence. The youth had quietly transformed in the dark underground. The night passed and the blue sea vanished. Qin Yu put away the little blue lamp, but he didn't touch the clearly transformed foundation establishment pill. This was because he had already discovered that as the rank of a pill increased, the time it took to absorb the deep blue light would also increase. The second night, the third night, when the little blue lamp restrained its light once more, Qin Yu's eyes flashed open, a sharp light exploding from them. During these past 3 days, his essence, energy, and divine had reached their peak. The 7 foundation-building pills had absorbed the deep blue brilliance for 3 nights, turning from cyan to azure. It was like the boundless vault of heaven, transparent and intoxicating. They were like precious treasures, naturally emitting a sparkling brilliance. Without hesitation, Qin Yu took out a foundation establishment pill and swallowed it. Today he was going to break through and reach foundation establishment. When the foundation establishment pill entered his stomach, it was like a spark falling into a pot of boiling oil, instantly igniting into a raging fire. The transcendence energy of the 10th layer of qi refining boiled completely. Like a wild beast that had escaped its reins, it rampaged through his body, bringing with it waves of tearing pain. He only left a trace of his mind to observe the state of his body, not interfering with it at all. The transcendence energy of the qi refinement realm was like mist, indiscernible and formless, hidden in the flesh, blood, and marrow, flowing in a disorderly manner. Only when all the transcendence energy was boiling, causing it to naturally collide together, could the foundation of the great Tao be formed amidst the tremors, and that was the foundation-building realm. Bang, bang, the rampaging magic power surged through his limbs and bones. When it reached its fastest speed, it sank into his Dantian sea and brazenly collided. Strong winds rose up around Qin Yu, causing his robes to flutter about. He had reached a critical juncture in his breakthrough. According to common sense, after a 10th layer aura refining cultivator swallowed a foundation establishment pill, they would have at least a 70% chance of breaking through. Moreover, the foundation establishment pills that Qin Yu took had been purified and upgraded by the little blue lamp, causing their medicinal efficacy to rise several times over. One of them was equal to 3. The breakthrough should have proceeded smoothly, but Qin Yu soon discovered that the explosive momentum of the spiritual power in his Dantian sea began to weaken, and he wasn't able to form the foundation of the great Tao. If things continued like this, then this breakthrough could be considered a failure. Qin Yu's eyes flashed open. He grabbed a foundation establishment pill and placed it in his mouth. Bang! The slightly dormant magic power was like oil being poured onto a raging inferno. It crazily collided with each other at an even greater speed. A stabbing pain spread through his body, but this degree of collision still wasn't enough. Qin Yu clenched his teeth. He grabbed a 3rd foundation establishment pill and swallowed it down. First rise, second fall, 3rd fall. He swallowed 3 foundation establishment pills in a row. This chapter is not yet finished. Please turn the page. If he couldn't make a breakthrough after this, Then he feared he would never have another chance to make a breakthrough in the future. Bang! The medicinal efficacy erupted, causing the magic power to instantly surpass the limit. Qin Yu stuffily coughed, and blood flowed out from his head. But at this moment, a smile lifted the corners of his lips. Within his Dantian Sea, there was a wild tide of magic power. The phantom of a pedestal appeared. Then, like a black hole, it crazily swallowed all the magic power around it. In a short period of a few breaths, all the magic energy had vanished completely, and the foundation platform condensed from an illusory image. It was completely green, simple, and steady, and it naturally emitted the aura of the profundities of the Grand Tao. Strictly speaking, this was the first step in cultivating the Great Tao. From this moment on, Qin Yu had truly established his foundation and stepped into the temple of cultivation. Shua, the strong winds around him vanished. Qin Yu sat where he was, blood still dripping from his head and his face pale. Love, go, small, say, neck, although it was only 3 foundation establishment pills. Strictly speaking, it was equal to over 10 ordinary pills. It was unknown whether or not such a crazy energy, refining, cultivator had appeared before Qin Yu. If it weren't for the fact that he had intentionally tempered his mortal body during this past year and swallowed down many body-tempering pills, causing his body's endurance to rise, then it wouldn't have been as simple as a few wounds. As he felt the earth-shaking changes in his body, Qin Yu was overjoyed. He bitterly smiled at his own talent. He needed over 10 foundation establishment pills in order to smoothly reach foundation establishment. Not only was he crazy, but he was also trashed to the extreme. But none of this was important. What was important was that from today onwards, he had become a foundation establishment cultivator. A smile bloomed on his face, rapidly spreading until he reared his head back and laughed heartily. Who would have thought that one day I, Qin Yu, would also reach foundation establishment? His eyes fell on the little blue lamp. Faintly, he felt as if the little blue lamp was also looking at him. But in the next moment, this feeling vanished. When he looked at the little blue lamp again, it was no different from before. Qin Yu restrained his smile. After a moment of thought, he placed the little blue lamp back into his chest. He lifted his hand, took out a pill, and swallowed it. He closed his eyes and began to meditate. For hours later, with the help of the medicinal efficacy, the injuries caused by the vibrations in his magic power had completely healed. Qin Yu stood up, wiped away the blood on his face, and then pushed open the door and walked up the stone steps. During this year, every time he broke through a level in his cultivation, he would attempt to open the gates of the pill disposal department. Although he had failed every time, when he reached the 10th level of energy refining, he had felt a faint tremor in the array formation. It was this tremor that gave Qin Yu infinite hope. Perhaps he could succeed today. As he adjusted his injuries, he had restored his magic power to perfection. As he walked up the steps, his essence energy and were also ready to be released. Thus, Qin Yu didn't hesitate at all. He stood in front of the entrance, his foundation, establishment, realm magic power roaring into the barrier. A familiar and terrifying extraction occurred. In an instant, all of Qin Yu's magic power vanished from sight. This time, the unmoving array formation finally began to fluctuate. It was like a stone falling into a lake, causing ripples to appear. Qin Yu endured the stabbing pain in his mind. He stubbornly stared ahead. Then, 2 light sounds rang out in his ears, like pine nuts opening their mouths. A black light flew out from the fog. Without any time to react, it landed on his chest. A terrifying strength crashed into him like a raging tide. Qin Yu was sent flying backwards, crashing into the stone steps and tumbling down dozens of steps. He spat out several mouthfuls of blood, dyeing his clothes red. He violently coughed. With difficulty, he took out the little blue lamp. Beside it was a knuckle-sized black nail. This nail had struck the center of the little blue lamp. If it weren't for this, Qin Yu's heart would have been pierced through and he would have died. After nervously inspecting the little blue lamp and finding that it was intact, Chinyu relaxed. He looked up at the entrance and revealed a carefree smile. Although the array formation spells were still there, Chinyu knew that the terrifying imprisonment had disappeared through the barrier. In other words, he could rely on the barrier to enter and leave as he pleased. Time was the most terrifying strength in the world. Not only could it cause Song Mengzi to die with hatred, but it could also cause this vicious array formation to become incomparably weak. Of course, this was inevitably related to the decline of the Eastern Mountain sect. No matter how strong an array formation was, it would still be damaged. This chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page. Dilapidated. As he rubbed the black nail between his fingers, some strange information appeared in his mind. Corpse sealing nail, demonic path, can be activated with magic power. Such a miraculous effect could only be achieved by a magic tool. Of course, the premise was that it hadn't been refined by others. Otherwise, it couldn't be used before the original master's mark was removed. The strength of this corpse sealing nail had weakened to the extreme with the passage of time. Otherwise, even if the little blue lamp had blocked the might of this magic tool, the terrifying strength it transmitted would have been enough to pulverize his organs into mush. The person who arranged this array formation in the past was truly meticulous. Even if someone forcefully broke through the array formation and faced the corpse-sealing nail in a weakened state, they would still die without a doubt. Chinyu coughed twice. He wiped the corner of his mouth and smeared some blood on the corpse-sealing nail. As he watched the blood being absorbed, he revealed a satisfied expression. Demonic path treasures were mostly refined with blood sacrifices. Seeing this today, it seemed that the blood he had lost wasn't in vain. He placed the corpse-sealing nail into his storage bag. As time passed, it would automatically absorb spiritual strength to restore itself. Then he placed the little blue lamp in his chest and took out several pills, swallowing them all. Having pills in hand was truly generous. Moreover, the effects were amazing. By the time Chinyu opened his eyes, only 6 hours had passed. Not only had his wounds healed, but his magic power was abundant once more. It would be dark soon. He would go out again. As the night deepened and everything was quiet, the light fog parted and Chinyu quietly walked out. He looked up at the full moon in the sky, the bright moonlight illuminating the young man's bright smile. After carefully looking around and making sure there was no one around, Chinyu took a deep breath of the fragrance of the earth mixed with the moonlight. His feet turned into a shadow and he vanished into the darkness. His journey was smooth. After a moment, Lang Tu's courtyard appeared in front of him. Good brothers, we share our blessings and difficulties together. If there were any trustworthy people in this world, then Lang Tu was one of them. Although you couldn't tell him about the little blue lamp, he still decided to give him some pills. He tapped his feet several times and quietly landed in the courtyard like a swan goose. Although he hadn't studied any true immortal magic arts, the magic power of the Foundation establishment realm was enough to make his body as light as a feather. With his formidable mortal body, this was easily accomplished. That brat potato would definitely be shocked. As Chinyu thought of Lang Tu's joyful shout, his lips curved up in a smile, but in the next moment his smile froze. The entire courtyard was in ruins, as if it had been abandoned for a long time. The stone blocks that Lang Tu had painstakingly practiced all day long were scattered in the weeds. There was a large pool of dark blood on the stone platform in front of the courtyard, incomparably dazzling beneath the moonlight. Something had happened. Chinyu paled. He forced himself not to think too much about it. After carefully looking around, he turned and left the courtyard. His figure was hidden in the darkness as he sped along the ground. Soon, he appeared in front of a small courtyard. If you don't want to die, then don't move. The black-robed voice was cold and gloomy. The outer court disciple was startled awake and immediately broke out in a cold sweat. This is 3 miles southeast of here. Where is the person in that courtyard? The outer court disciple thought back, and his face filled with even more panic. Say, Senior! The hand around his neck tightened. Speak. I'll speak, I'll speak. The person in that courtyard has already died. He died 3 months ago. The black-robed disciple stiffened. What is the name of the person in that courtyard? Feeling the bone-chilling cold behind him, the outer court disciple's mind nearly collapsed. He sobbed. Lang Tu, his name was Lang Tu. Qin Yu gasped for breath. Every time his chest rose and fell, it was as if it were being torn apart. Dead. Lang Tu had died. After a long time, he regained his composure. He hissed out, Who killed him? The outer court disciple shook his head. I don't know, I really don't know. His expression was one of panic and panic. Qin, you moved closer to him. Tell me, what happened tonight is only a nightmare, otherwise I will kill you. Believe me. His voice was calm, but every syllable was filled with an icy chill that penetrated straight to the marrow. Chapter 10. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. The outer sect disciple finally cried out and said, It's Su Jian. This lowly one saw with his own eyes that he poisoned Lang Tu's food and brought people to surround him in the middle of the night. Finally, he was thrown off a 100,000-foot cliff. This lowly one has already spoken. Please forgive me, Senior. Qin Yu pressed down with his fingers, and the man's eyes rolled back into his head as he fainted. Then he turned and left. His black robes bathed in the moonlight and seemed to absorb the light, making it even darker. Love, Gob Small, say, Nekku Su Jian. Qin Yu's entire body was as cold and gloomy as a ghost. His eyes burned red with rage, but he didn't lose his reasoning. Su Jian wasn't the only one who had killed Lang Tuesday. If he wanted to take revenge, he couldn't leave anyone behind. Moreover, even though he had reached the foundation establishment stage, he didn't know any offensive techniques. The only thing he could use was the demonic artifact, the corpse-sealing nail. In a direct confrontation, he might not be able to win. Qin Yu lifted his right hand. He looked at his smooth and white fingers that shined with an ivory luster. He whispered, Is it poison? The darkness of night faded and light shrouded the earth once more. The tranquility of the Eastern Mountain sect was broken by the chaos around them. The outer court disciples all left their residences and began their day's work. No one knew that a certain disciple who woke up in the morning found that everything was as calm as before in his fear and hesitation. In the end, he chose to remain silent. Qin Yu easily entered Su Jian's courtyard. As a leading figure amongst the outer court disciples, not only was his residence spacious, but it was also exquisitely constructed. This could be seen from the underground wine cellar. The vault was made of green bricks, and the floor was extremely clean. The oak wine racks were the color of logs, and they emitted a faint fragrance that mixed with the fragrance of the wine, making it even more enchanting. Qin Yu looked around and found an open wine jar. There was still some wine inside. It should be leftovers. This kind of wine had to be finished in a short period of time. Otherwise, if it came into contact with the air for too long, it would turn sour. He carefully removed the seal on the wine and put his hand inside. After wiping away the wine, he restored the wine seal to its original state and turned to leave. Many people knew that Su Jian was a wine lover. He had many lackeys by his side. To a large extent, it was because the Su family outside the mountains sent a large amount of fine wine every year. That was why he always liked to share good wine with his henchmen to win their hearts. Tonight was no exception. Lang Tu had died. Su Jian had personally thrown him off a 100,000-foot cliff. That cliff was so deep that one couldn't see the bottom, and there was a raging river below. If one fell there, there was no way they could survive. However, this brat was indeed troublesome to deal with. Even after being poisoned, he still had such godly strength. Thinking of this, his chest began to ache faintly. Luckily, everything had come to an end. There was still Chinyu. Perhaps he was still alive, but after being ravaged by pill toxins for an entire year, he was likely struggling at death's door. Humph. Those who dare to go against me will not have a good ending. Thinking of this, Su Jian raised his head and drank the wine in his cup in one gulp. A trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. Why was there a trace of fragrance compared to yesterday? Could it be because of the contact with the air? As Xiao, as a wine lover, he Su, he was Su, he was Yu, he was Jian, was he, Wan this, of Lin Jian, he this Su, this Wang Jian, he, Lang, when he, Jian Su, this Su, Jian this Su Jian, he fell to the ground, wanting to cry out for help, but no sound came out. His body arched like a prawn, his fingers wildly clawed at the ground, his nails falling off and his flesh cracking. Soon, the entire area was covered in blood. Qin Yu stood on a tree, coldly watching everything that happened in the courtyard. He waited for Su Jian's body to completely stiffen before he lowered his head and left. The world of cultivators was filled with countless mysteries. The reason he didn't show himself was because he didn't want to leave any trace behind. Without staying any longer, Qin Yu returned to the pill disposal department. He set up a cenotaph beside the underground medicine field. He sat on the ground. There was no wine or food, so he didn't need to care about his hands that were covered in mud. Potato, you see, killing people is simple. There are no traces, and you can make them taste enough pain. So, you have to admit that I am smarter than you. Speaking of this, I can't help but curse you. For all these years you've been trying to imitate me and call yourself a young master. But why didn't you learn 30% of my intelligence? You actually died so easily. Do you know what you missed out on? I am already prepared to share the effects of the little blue lamp with you. Qin Yu clapped his hands and took out a foot-long sea blue lamp. Look, this is the little blue lamp. The name I came up with is simple, easy to remember, and also appropriate. This chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page. Aren't you curious as to why Wei Wei suddenly flipped over? Let me tell you, the reason is because of this. Do you see? This young master has also reached the foundation establishment realm. He rambled on, showing off for a long time. He even took out a series of pills and placed them in front of the grave mound. Qin Yu felt a bit parched. He lifted a hand to wipe his face and then took back the pills one by one. You won't be able to use these after you die, so I will keep them for myself. But from today onwards, I will give the title of young master to you. Sleep well, no one will come here. He turned and left. He crawled out of the passage and lay down on his dirty bed. For the first time in 8 years, he didn't cultivate and fell into a deep sleep. This sleep lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. It was as if he wanted to release all the exhaustion in his bones. When Qin Yu opened his eyes, his mood had calmed down. At the very least, that was the case on the surface. He began to cultivate once more. This time he was even more serious than before, and he even forgot to eat or sleep. This was because Qin Yu had personally experienced the frailty of life. Lang Tu's death made him realize that only by being strong enough could he live on. But several days later, Qin Yu stopped cultivating. This was because he discovered that after breaking into the Foundation establishment realm, the effects of the minor spirit pills and essence augmenting pills had rapidly weakened. They were no longer able to support his rapid rise in cultivation. The reason was simple. Energy refining realm pills had a limited effect on a Foundation establishment cultivator. If he wanted to solve this problem, he would have to swallow higher level pills. After thinking for a day, Qin Yu stepped out of the disposal department once more. He looked up, determined his direction, and then quietly left. In this year, the waste pills in the furnace had nearly been used up. If he wanted to continue swallowing pills to cultivate, he would have to obtain them from the outside world. This was risky, but after considering it again and again, Qin Yu decided to do it. If everything went smoothly, his harvests would be amazing. East Stream Town wasn't large. There were only 7 or 8 long streets, but it was the most famous trade city square for 1,000 miles. The Zhang family's Pill Treasure Pavilion was an old and established business that specialized in pills and materials. Because of their reliable quality and fair prices, they had a first-class reputation in the outside world. Beneath the bright light of a glass lamp, the chief shopkeeper frowned. He was carefully calculating the recent sales and purchases of the store. The more he calculated, the uglier his complexion became. In this last half-month, he had sold 421 sets of alchemy materials, twice as many as usual. As for purchases, there were less than 100, and the sales volume of pills had fallen by nearly 40%. After managing the counter for 50 years, the chief shopkeeper had already developed an instinct. He could immediately smell something unusual from this matter. Go and investigate just what is going on. The chief shopkeeper waved his hand. A shadow flickered in the corner, and a figure quietly left. The Zhang family had dominated East Streamtown for several hundred years. The main reason for this was because they had many powerhouses, but the secret forces they had cultivated were also closely related. The chief shopkeeper was confident that as long as the Zhang family took action, no matter where this undercurrent came from, there would be no place for them to hide. 2 hours later, several thin sheets of paper were delivered to the chief shopkeeper. He looked down, and the carefree expression on his face immediately disappeared. Beads of sweat even began to drip down his forehead. He didn't dare to delay any longer. He grabbed the sheets of paper and roared for someone to prepare a carriage. Then he drove straight to the Zhang family's mansion. The boundless mountains were like great beasts that occupied the earth. They stretched out to the end of one's line of sight, stretching for tens of thousands of miles. The mountains were covered with poisonous miasma, and there were even monster beasts and evil spirits roaming about. It was because there were very few people here that a massive amount of spirit grasses and plants were preserved. The reason that East Streamtown had its current status was largely because it was adjacent to the entrance to the mountains. Countless monster hunters and herb gatherers would sell their harvests here. Chao Hua was one of these monster hunters. His origins were unknown, but he had been slaughtering his way through these towering mountains for 7 or 8 years. Even now he hadn't died. This was enough to show just how fierce he was. Gradually he gained a bit of fame. Those that respected him would call him Brother Chao when they saw him. Brother Chao, you've been quite idle lately. It seems like I haven't seen you enter the mountains for several days. In a wine shop on the side of the street, a man opened his robes to reveal a strong chest and loudly greeted Chao Hua. Chao Hua laughed. Can't I rest a bit? If I keep entering the mountains, be careful that I don't die inside. The wine shop roared with laughter. Many people secretly curled their lips. Since they were monster hunters, they had long since tied their heads to their belts. If they didn't risk their lives, how could they exchange for pills to increase their cultivation? If they were afraid of death, they shouldn't have stayed here. Chao Hua, this chapter isn't finished. Please turn to the next page. Chao Hua hurriedly walked into the alley. He tossed aside the laughter behind him and revealed a mocking smile. What a bunch of idiots. This father has so many spirit stones that he can't even use them up. Who would want to risk their lives and go into the mountains with you? Thinking of that small courtyard, Chao Hua's heart burned with a fiery heat. He immediately revealed an anxious expression. The more time passes, the more people will know about this. I have to hurry up and earn as much money as I can. As Chao Hua thought of this, he quickened his pace. He nearly ran out of the alley, a smile on his face as he looked at the secluded courtyard in front of him. But soon his smile froze on his face. Several carriages were quietly parked on the street. The wide carriages occupied most of the street, and the tall horses were luxuriously decorated. But what startled Chao Hua the most was that the black thorn emblem was inscribed on the carriages. The Zhang family. He was still holding the materials he had just purchased from Pill Treasure Pavilion in his chest. The back of Chow Hua's clothes was instantly soaked in a cold sweat. All of this happened in an instant. After living on the edge of a knife for so many years, Chow Hua still had the mental fortitude to do so. He lowered his head in awe as he crossed the street and headed in another direction. But at this time, a voice sounded out from the carriage, causing him to stiffen. "Is that him?" "Yes, miss." "Let me ask." "Please wait a moment." This simple conversation wasn't hurried and seemed casual. Chow Hua had more than enough time to leave, but his feet seemed to grow rooted to the ground. He didn't dare to move at all. The shopkeeper, who was bowing in front of the carriage, straightened up. He coldly swept his eyes over him. "You brat, at least you know what's good for you and didn't run away. At least you won't suffer any physical pain. Let's go. Tell me what you are doing here." Chow Hua followed with a pale face. After a moment, the shopkeeper returned to the carriage. He respectfully said, "Miss, I've asked. It's the same as the previous 3, a 3-to-1 ratio." As he spoke, he looked towards the courtyard not too far away, a deep sense of wariness in his eyes. The carriage quieted down. The woman inside seemed to be deliberating. After several breaths of time, the carriage door was pushed open and a mass of blue floated out. Her facial features weren't particularly striking, and there was even a hint of immaturity in her eyes. But when combined together, she exuded an astonishing charm, her every movement captivating the mind. Zhang Mo swept her eyes over the courtyard that was still closed, as if it didn't know anything about the outside world. Her eyes flashed. "I'll go take a look." The shopkeeper's eyes widened. "You can't," Zhang Mo waved her hand, interrupting him. "I came to ask for a pill, so I'll just follow their request. Do they still dare to make things difficult for me?" As she spoke, she glanced towards the carriage at the very back, her heart calming. The shopkeeper couldn't stop her. He could only prepare the materials and follow behind with a solemn expression. The miss was the High Ancestor's beloved pearl. If something were to happen to her, she might as well die earlier and leave her family a path to survival. She knocked on the door. The courtyard was quiet. Just as the shopkeeper frowned and was about to knock again, the sound of lazy footsteps echoed out from within. The courtyard door opened to reveal a tall and straight youth. Although he couldn't be considered handsome, he still had a heroic aura to him. However, his eyes were bloodshot, and he looked as if he hadn't rested enough. His tone was a bit stiff. "You're also here to ask for a pill? Do you know the rules?" Zhang Mo smelled the medicinal fragrance and calmly bowed. "I heard that a grandmaster had arrived at East Stream Town. I am Pill Treasure Pavilion's Zhang Mo. So I came to request an audience. I never thought that the grandmaster would be so young. It is truly beyond my expectations." The youth's complexion changed. He waved his hand again and again. "Don't speak nonsense. The one refining the pill is the old. Grandmaster, I am only responsible for running errands." "Oh, then I was rude. I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist to pass on a message that a junior from Pill Treasure Pavilion's Zhang family requests an audience." Zhang Mo faintly smiled. The youth shook his head. "The Grandmaster does not receive guests. If you want a pill, then hand over the materials. Otherwise, please leave." Zhang Mo's face stiffened. She immediately darkened. "Fellow Taoist, it would be best if I passed on a message. My Zhang family can be considered a powerful force in East Stream Town. But do you think I don't even have the qualifications to request an audience with the Grandmaster?" The youth rolled his eyes. He slammed the door shut, and the sound of footsteps soon faded away. Chapter 11. Genius 1. Second remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. The head shopkeeper hurriedly said. "Miss, the Grandmaster overseeing this place has a servant boy who is already at the Foundation establishment realm at such a young age. You must not be impulsive." Zhang Mo frowned. The gloominess on her face had long since disappeared. She glanced at the courtyard door and then turned to leave. The head shopkeeper secretly felt embarrassed. How could the young miss be so easily angered? Just now, she was probably trying to sound him out. There was no need for him to say anything. As he was thinking this, he saw Zhang Emo walk towards the rearmost carriage. She softly said, "Great-grandfather, little Emo has been bullied. You have to give her justice." The shopkeeper's jaw dropped open. He soon regained his composure and hurried forwards. Together with the servants, they all fell to their knees. "Greetings, old ancestor." A gentle voice sounded out from within the carriage. "You little monkey, you were clearly rude in the first place. So how can you blame others for closing the door on you?" The door opened on its own. An old man in a black robe sat on a light yellow cushion. His hair was neatly tied up in a purple gold crown. His face was simple and plain, and he wore a faint smile. Just by sitting in the carriage and not doing anything, a strange pressure had already enveloped the entire long street. The Golden Core realm. Zhang Qingming cupped his hands together in greeting. His calm voice spread far into the distance. "I wonder which fellow Taoist has arrived. Can you open the door and meet with me?" Soon the courtyard doors opened once more. The young man that appeared before respectfully walked in front of the carriage. "Junior Qin Yu greets Senior Tsang." Tsang Qingming frowned. The air suddenly became heavy. Qin Yu revealed a look of awe. He forced a smile and said, "Senior Tsang, please don't make things difficult for me. If Grandmaster doesn't want to see guests, then there's nothing I can do." After saying that, he paused and probed, "Why don't you go in yourself? In any case, I can't stop you. I don't think Grandmaster will blame me." Zhang Qingming looked at the courtyard entrance. After several breaths of silence, he shook his head. "That's fine. Since fellow Taoist wishes to concentrate on alchemy, I won't disturb you any longer. But my Zhang family has been established for a long time. The exchange ratio of 3-to-1 really puts my pill treasure pavilion in a difficult position." Qin Yu had a respectful expression. "Grandmaster said that in the future the exchange rate will be 5-to-1. Moreover, we will stay here for at most 2 months before leaving." Tsang Qingming revealed a smile. "Since that's the case, I will first do business with fellow Taoist." With a flick of his sleeve, a cyan wooden box appeared. There are 300 portions of essence, soul, pill materials inside. Can you come back in 7 days to collect them? Qin Yu thought for a moment. 5 days is enough. He took out a storage bag from his chest and placed the blue box inside. Zhang Qingming swept his eyes over it. His pupils shrank and his smile became even warmer. Then, 5 days from now, Mo will come and pick up the pill. Little friend, we'll take our leave. Qin Yu watched as the Zhang family caravan left. Then he returned to his courtyard and closed the door. As he walked back to his room, he let out a long breath, his face slightly pale. Across from him, there was a small stone covered with cracks on the table. This was the golden core that Song Mangzi had left behind. The reason old freak Zhang was able to suppress him was because of this thing. Even though it was a close shave, after today, there shouldn't be anyone who would dare to cause trouble here anymore. Qin Yu smiled. The time to truly harvest his harvest was coming soon. In the carriage, Tsang Qingming closed his eyes in meditation. Then he suddenly said, "Pass down the order that no one is allowed to offend that courtyard." He paused for a moment and then continued, "If there is a chance, try to befriend that Qin Yu." Zhang Amor frowned. "Grandmaster is worthy of my Zhang family's respect. That boy doesn't seem like a good person. So what use is there in befriending him?" Tsang Qingming opened his eyes and pointed at her with a smile. "You're still so narrow-minded. You're not willing to suffer even the slightest loss." He shook his head and sighed. He's at the false nascent soul realm, and he's also an alchemy grandmaster at that. He's hidden here and focused on the Tao of alchemy, so he should be able to gather his essence, energy, and soul. When he reaches the peak, he will be able to leap through the dragon gate and become a nascent soul cultivator. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Said, how could the disciple of such a person be ordinary? To be honest, this old man is considering whether it's possible for the two of you to get together. A gold and silver threaded storage bag, TSK. Although it's not of a high grade, it's very rare. It's much better than the one I use. Nascent soul, within 100,000 miles of the Southern Empire, there are at most 5 cultivators of the great Tao. As Zhang Mo thought about how that common-looking courtyard was hiding a giant alligator on the verge of stepping into this boundary, she felt her heart shake. But as she heard this, she immediately regained her composure. Her face flushed red, and she pouted. Great-grandfather, I will accompany you and never marry. If you do this again, Mo will be angry. Tsang Qingming put away his emotions and laughed. Great-grandfather, I will accompany you and never marry. If you do this again, Mo will be angry. Zhang Mo lowered her head, a lazy face appearing in her mind. She wrinkled her nose and humphed inwardly. So what if you are a nascent soul disciple? I don't like you at all. Tsang Qingming was the best signboard. His actions had caused the arrival of an alchemy grandmaster in East Streamtown to be known by everyone in a single day. The remote courtyard was instantly upgraded to become the 3rd holy land in town, beside the Zhang family and Kong family. Countless cultivators came to pay their respects. When news of the small courtyard's initial 3-to-1 ratio spread out, countless cultivators who had sold materials and bought back pills at a high price all gnashed their teeth. As for Chao Hua and the others who had made a small fortune, whether or not they would be beaten into a pig's head was another story. There was no need to elaborate on the minor details. Qin Yu was extremely busy. Even though the fleeting flame furnace had extraordinary effects, it was still difficult to refine 300 sets of essence soul pill materials in 5 days. Luckily, he had many pills, so he didn't need to rest. And with the existence of the little blue lamp, as long as the pills took shape, he would be able to meet the passing standards. Of course, this was only passing standards. He wouldn't take out top-grade pills, at least not now. The situation had just stabilized, and the Kong family, another noble family of East Streamtown, had already sent someone to greet him. He naturally wouldn't break this peace. Without sleep or rest, 5 days later, Zhang Mo respectfully knocked on his door and took away 60 essence soul pills. Qin Yu frowned, a bit confused. Why was this girl so displeased with him, and why did she roll her eyes at him before leaving? Luckily, he wasn't someone with a heart of glass, and he had no interest in Zhang Mo. He turned and closed the door, blocking out the countless awe and envy in his eyes before restoring his tranquility. The 60 essence soul pills had been the final test. Since he had smoothly completed it, there wouldn't be any more trouble. He announced that he would temporarily stop refining pills and began to swallow pills to cultivate. The fundamental reason he had taken the risk to come here was to increase his cultivation. Although practicing alchemy was important, he couldn't put the cart before the horse. The difficulty of cultivating in the foundation establishment realm had clearly increased. If the energy refining realm was a pool, then the foundation establishment realm was a small lake. Increasing one's magic power and filling a pool was simple, but filling a small lake was 10 times more difficult. Qin Yu swallowed pills like he was eating, day and night without rest. Even after spending half a month, his cultivation had only reached the 2nd level of foundation establishment. Originally, he was prepared to continue cultivating for a period of time. Since he had many pills on hand, he didn't need to refine anymore. But the endless stream of visitors left Qin Yu with no choice but to leave seclusion. He suppressed his impatience and dealt with wave after wave of young elites. Those that could be called young elites certainly weren't ordinary people. Even if they weren't the elder senior apprentice brother of a sect, they had to at least have some reputation. A foundation establishment cultivation was the lowest threshold, and even those at the energy refining realm would be embarrassed. Since they were young elites, they were naturally busy. They had to cultivate, they had to flatter their teachers, they had to occasionally chat with their senior apprentice sisters and junior apprentice sisters, and they had to do some things that were beneficial to their bodies and minds. Since everyone was so busy and had gathered at East Streamtown, there had to be a reason. As the Grand Master's disciple, Qin Yu didn't need to waste any effort to understand the reason. It turned out that the demonic path had recently ravaged the Southern Empire. Many sect disciples had died, and there were even more that went missing. The disciples of the various sects had gathered here to discuss how to form the Demon Buster Alliance. This chapter isn't finished. Please turn to the next page. To prevent demonic flames from ravaging the Southern Empire. After hearing that the Eastern Mountain sect's elder senior apprentice, Brother Han Dong, the rising genius Wei Wei, had died at the hands of the demonic path, and that several outer court disciples had perished overnight, Qin Yu could only suppress his complaints. After all, he seemed to have played a part in this matter. After being interrupted several times while refining pills and cultivating, Qin Yu simply moved a chair over and sat at the entrance to the courtyard. All requests for pills and requests for an audience were rejected, but soon he regretted his actions. The reputation of being the direct disciple of an alchemy grandmaster had attracted a large swath of flies. Several layers of buzzing noises surrounded him, and there was also flattery and flattery. After persisting for less than an hour, Qin Yu was defeated. He stood up, cupped his hands together, and was about to send the guest away when he heard cries of alarm in his ears. White clouds came from the horizon, and atop them was a woman. If Zhang Mo, Er's beauty, could be said to be the combination of her 5 senses, creating a transcendent charm, then this woman's entire body was perfect to the pinnacle. It was hard to imagine how such a perfect person could be born in the world, like a goddess descending to the mortal world. Her calm expression naturally released a sense of grace and nobility that made it hard for others to profane her. Qin Yu's mind shook. A numb and bitter feeling surged out from the depths of his heart, but he immediately suppressed it. But in the next moment his eyes widened. With a cry of alarm, he quickly lowered his head. Ning Ling furrowed her eyebrows. The white cloud beneath her was formed from a magic tool. Just now, the circulation of magic power had stagnated, causing it to disperse. But in just an instant, the magic power began to flow once more. The white cloud hadn't truly dispersed, so no one should have been able to see what was beneath her skirt. But for some unknown reason, she felt that there was something strange just now. Her eyes instantly turned sharp and fierce. She swept her eyes over the crowd below, revealing a cold intent. But before she could continue, several people flew over and interrupted her. The Sky Cloud Sword Sect's chief disciple's face was as cold as ice. Junior apprentice, Sister Ning, why were you injured? We will definitely seek justice for you. Ning Ling greeted the several people and said in a soft voice, I met the demonic path's little monarch on the road and fought with him several times. This person is truly worthy of being a rising star of the demonic path. He is extremely strong. If fellow Taoists encounter him in the future, you must be careful. The several young elites were enraged. The demonic path's little monarch, Liang Taizu. We were just discussing how to exterminate the demonic path, and yet he still dares to be so rampant. He'd better not let me see him. Otherwise I will make sure he lives in a life or death situation. That's right. In my 7-star city, for disciples have already fallen to this devil's evil hands. Luckily, Junior Apprentice Sister Ning was able to escape unscathed today. Come, since you and I have gathered here today, let's carefully discuss how we will kill this devil here. The several people who spoke were all outstanding talents. As they crowded around Ning Ling, her noble temperament was immediately magnified to the extreme. Countless people were dazzled by her beauty, but also ashamed of themselves. Ning Ling nodded. Her eyes swept over the ground. That boy had already slipped away without a trace. She maintained her composure and followed the several people into East Stream Town. Closing the courtyard doors, Chinyu let out a long breath. Although he hadn't done anything wrong, he still felt a little guilty. But the problem was that he hadn't done it on purpose. His eyes actually had the ability to see through things. How come he hadn't discovered this before? When the white cloud was about to disperse, it was enough to block his line of sight. But, for some reason, Chinyu was able to clearly see through it. Beneath her skirt, her underwear was torn and mottled with blood. When it contrasted with her snow-white skin, it was even more breathtaking. Chinyu shook his head, but he couldn't stop himself from thinking about it. That scene was branded into his mind. He feared he would never be able to forget it. If he couldn't forget it, then so be it. In any case, it would be difficult to see her again in the future, so he might as well consider it a wonderful accident. When he was bored in the future, perhaps he could really dirty. Chinyu patted his head. He was still far from reaching this step, so he didn't dare to have any random thoughts. He pushed open the door and entered his room, deciding that he wouldn't go out for the time being. But there were some things that couldn't be avoided even if you wanted to. Chapter 12. Geniuses in 1 second remember love go away. This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. The next day, when Chinyu opened the door and impatiently looked at Zangyamo, his face stiffened. Of course, he quickly covered it up. After greeting her, he cupped his hands together and said, "May I ask who this fairy maiden is?" For some unknown reason, as Zangyamo saw him seriously bow, anger rose in her heart. She said, "What does who I am have to do with you? Big Sister Ning, you must be careful. There are some people who are shameless." Chinyu had a helpless expression. The two of them had only met 3 times today, and they hadn't spoken more than 20 sentences. How was he shameless? Ningling's eyes flashed. She didn't answer, and instead asked, "I seem to have seen fellow Taoist yesterday." Chinyu's back was instantly covered in a cold sweat. His face was blank. "Did I? I didn't know." Ningling observed his expression. After several breaths of time, she faintly smiled. "My name is Ningling." Chinyu was nervous. He cupped his hands together in greeting. "Chinyu," Zangyamo grumbled. "Big Sister Ning, why did you tell him your name? Didn't I tell you to be careful?" Chinyu coughed. "Miss Sung, I believe I have never disrespected you in the least. If you continue to ruin my reputation, then I can only do as you wish." Zangyamo was startled. Then she understood his meaning. Her eyes widened. "You dare!" Ningling stopped her. She lightly said, "Fellow Taoist Chinyu, I heard that Grandmaster was here. The reason I asked Amo to bring me here is to ask for a pill." As she spoke, her hand flashed and a jade box appeared. Storage bag. This woman's status wasn't minor. Chinyu's heart chilled. He steeled his resolve not to reveal even the slightest bit of information. There are 3 sets of enduring glamour pill materials in the jade box. I only have these. I wonder if Grandmaster can refine them for me as a congratulatory gift for an elder's birthday. Of course, even if all of them fail, Ningling will have no complaints. The enduring glamour pill had the effect of retaining one's youth. After swallowing it, depending on one's physique, it could preserve one's appearance for 20 to 30 years. It was especially precious to female cultivators. It was a foundation establishment realm pill, but in terms of refining difficulty, it could compare to a golden core realm pill. The failure rate was horrifyingly high. Chinyu frowned. He should have refused, but facing Ningling's deep and clear eyes, he unexpectedly nodded. After coming to an agreement, the 2 women didn't stay any longer. They agreed to come back 2 days later to pick up the pill and left hand in hand. Watching the 2 of them leave, Chinyu rubbed his forehead and bitterly smiled. Although the beauty was pleasing to the eye, it also disturbed the mind. He silently warned himself not to do this again in the future. He turned around and stepped into the small courtyard, heading straight for the pill room. This was the enduring glamour pill. If he didn't have the little blue lamp, then he would have given up on it. Even so, he couldn't afford to be careless. After all, he had already made a name for himself as a grandmaster alchemist. Although the appearance nourishing pill was difficult, he had to refine it, even if he had to risk his life. Bang, bang, deep thumping sounds constantly echoed out from the alchemy room. Even though Chinyu had expected this, the difficulty of refining the enduring glamour pill still far surpassed his imagination. All 3 sets of materials failed. At night, he borrowed the little blue lamp to extract them and then continued refining. For 2 days and 2 nights, Chinyu tried no less than 30 times. Finally, on the 2nd night, he managed to refine a pill. Of course, this pill likely didn't even have the same effect as a third of the enduring glamour pill. If it were placed in the hands of another alchemist, it would be useless. Luckily, he had the little blue lamp. Chinyu ignored the pill in his hand. It was half the size of a normal pill. He hurriedly tossed it into the foot-wide sea blue light. There was still some time until dawn. He hoped he could succeed. After doing all this, a deep sense of exhaustion came from his limbs and bones. His body moved slightly, and crackling sounds could be heard. He sat down cross-legged and took out an essence soul pill, an essence augmenting pill, and a body forging pill. He swallowed them down and closed his eyes. The essence soul pill strengthened one's divine sense. The essence augmenting pill increased one's magic power, and the body forging pill strengthened the mortal body. These were all upgraded versions of energy refining realm pills. As for why he swallowed 3 at a time, that was because he could do whatever he wanted with the pills. What? You? This chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page. If you said that absorbing the pills like this wasn't good, then you could say it in another way. Those who had pills could do whatever they wanted. As the sun rose, the willful Chinyu was awoken by a rapid knock on his door. He shook his still groggy head and opened the door to welcome a guest. The one knocking was indeed Zhang Mo. This girl seemed to know that the Grandmaster wouldn't lower himself to the same level as a junior like her, so her actions became increasingly rude and unreasonable. Before Ningling even spoke, she directly attacked. The appointed time has arrived. Where are the aesthetic augmenting pills? The Grandmaster's reputation has spread far and wide, so don't tell me that all of them have failed. Chinyu decided to ignore her. He nodded to Ningling and said, "Wait a moment, I will go and get them now." He turned and walked back. The courtyard doors were wide open. Zhang Mo stomped her feet in anger, but she didn't dare to take a single step in. Playing a little temper and going against the will of the Grandmaster were 2 completely different levels. She even suspected that Chinyu had left the door open to trick her. This despicable fellow. You still haven't come out? Why are you taking so long to get the pills? Zhang Mo clenched her teeth. Ningling also frowned. After a while, Chinyu's figure appeared in her line of sight. Without waiting for Zhang Mo to speak, he respectfully said, "Two misses, please follow me to my courtyard." Ningling was surprised. She looked deep into the courtyard. Chinyu nodded. This is the will of the Grandmaster. After stopping Zhang Mo from taunting him, Ningling pulled her into the small courtyard. The courtyard was a bit messy, and there were many dead leaves on the ground. It was clear that no one had cleaned this place for a long time. Chinyu closed the courtyard doors and said, "It's a bit messy. I've made a fool of myself." He took a deep breath and took out a jade bottle from his chest. No one took it. Ningling furrowed her eyebrows. Beside her, Zhang Mo had an expression as if she had finally caught his tail. Chinyu laughed and shook his head. He carefully placed the jade bottle on the stone table behind him and took several steps back. "Miss Ningling, please take a look." Ningling hesitated for a moment. Then she took the jade bottle and opened it. With a loud cry, she saw that there was a small blue pill lying quietly in her palm. It was only half the size of a normal pill, but at this time no one cared about it at all. Everyone's eyes were glued to it. A rich medicinal fragrance spread through the air. After a long time, The deathly silence was broken by a trembling voice. "Big Sister Ning, this is," Zangamoer stuttered, her flushed face shaking. Ningling sucked in a deep breath. "Fellow Taoist Qinyu?" Qinyu's face was full of praise. "A top-grade, enduring glamour pill. Miss Ning, there is no need to ask. I also don't know the reason. This is all Grandmaster's will. However, I ask that Miss Ning keep this a secret and not reveal it." Ningling turned and bowed towards the depths of the courtyard. "This pill can be called an enduring glamour pill. After swallowing it, one's appearance will remain unchanged for the rest of their lives. Ningling thanks Grandmaster for his generous gift." She put away the enduring glamour pill and took out a jade pendant from her storage ring. This object was the size of a knuckle and sparkled with a crystalline light. The value of an enduring glamour pill is unparalleled. This junior cannot not express his gratitude. Although this aura-restraining jade pendant isn't as precious as this pill, I ask Grandmaster to accept it. The moment Qinyu received the jade pendant, information surged into his mind and he couldn't refuse anymore. Aura-restraining jade pendant. After refining it, one could hide their aura and hide it from a golden core's divine sense. He needed this jade pendant far too much. Without a change in expression, Qinyu turned and bowed. "Grandmaster, this junior likes this jade pendant. What do you think?" Silence reigned. Qinyu revealed a happy expression. "It's a success. Thank you, Miss Ning." Ningling glanced at him and shook her head. "I should be the one thanking fellow Taoist Qin. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to feel at ease taking this pill for free." She bowed. "I don't dare to disturb Grandmaster any further. This junior bids her farewells." Zhang Mo was clearly a bit absent-minded. She drifted away behind her. Qinyu sent the two away and then hurried back to his alchemy room. He frowned. He didn't know why the enduring glamour pill had risen to the highest level top-grade pill in less than half a night. No, this chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page. Knowing whether or not this matter would cause great waves, Qinyu frowned in thought. After a long time, he let out a long breath. Although a top-grade enduring glamour pill was amazing, it shouldn't be considered out of line for an alchemy grandmaster. As long as he was a bit more cautious and didn't refine any more top-grade pills, this matter would soon pass. Today, although he seemed calm and carefree, he was actually walking on a tightrope. The slightest mistake and he would be beyond redemption. Cautious. He had to be cautious. The carriage was incomparably quiet. Ningling was lost in thought. Across from her, Zhang Mo wanted to say something but hesitated. Finally, she couldn't help but ask in a soft voice, "Big Sister Ning, do you know this Grandmaster?" Ningling thought for a moment and said, "It should be because of my family." Zhang Mo nodded. She had already heard from the old ancestor that Ningling's status wasn't ordinary and that there was a tremendous background hidden behind her. Today's events had confirmed this point. She gathered up her courage. "Big Sister Ning, if I ask the Grandmaster for a pill, will he agree?" Ningling was silent for several breaths of time. "Mo? If this Grandmaster can recognize my background, he must be a great figure. You can make a request to such an existence, but you cannot have any resentment or disrespect towards him. Do you understand what I mean?" Zhang Mo's face paled. She forced out a smile and said, "Big Sister Ning, rest assured that I know how serious this is, but I still have to try." She leaned back in the carriage and closed her eyes, no longer speaking. Ningling sighed inwardly. She was well aware of why Zhang Mo had asked for a pill, but obtaining the enduring glamour pill today was already a great favor. It wasn't something that a magic tool that could conceal one's aura could compare with. Regarding this matter, it wasn't good for her to say anything. She hoped that the Grandmaster would be merciful. The Zhang family's old ancestor, Zhang Qingming, came to visit once more. This time, it was countless times grander than before. All sorts of greeting gifts piled up into a small mountain. After hearing the reason for his visit, Qin Yu's complexion became extremely ugly. He glanced at Zhang Mo and said, "Senior Zhang, what is the meaning of this? Could it be that you want to force the Grandmaster to refine pills for your Zhang family?" Zhang Qingming sighed. "Little friend, there is no need for you to overthink this. The Zhang family has no intention of disrespecting the Grandmaster at all. This is truly a matter that is difficult to speak of. If the Lord can help me, I will be eternally grateful." Qin Yu flatly refused. Miss Ning's enduring glamour pill was refined by the Grandmaster after he consumed a great deal of effort. I believe that Senior Zhang also understands that it is impossible for the Grandmaster to help at this time. I ask that you take back your gift. Zhang Qingming's heart shook. He had already guessed that the Grandmaster was gathering his essence, energy, and divine to break into the nascent soul realm in a single go. Qin Yu's words undoubtedly prove this point. If so, then it was completely impossible for him to request a pill. His complexion instantly dimmed, and he seemed to age significantly. He stood up and said, "I was rash. Farewell." "Great-grandfather," Zhang Mo cried out. She fell to her knees. "Grandmaster, I beg you to save my uncle. He will die, he will die." As she cried, Qin Yu roughly understood why Zhang Mo had such an intense reaction. The Zhang family had a son named Zhang Zhongxiu. He was a heaven-gifted genius who had reached the 10th level of energy refining at 16 years of age. In particular, in the path of alchemy, his performance was even more amazing. Such a talented young master of an aristocratic family should have had an incomparably bright future ahead of him. But he was still young and didn't know what was important. He broke through energy refining on his own and reached foundation establishment. At the critical moment, he was interrupted by Zhang Mo, who had accidentally barged in. Not only did his breakthrough fail, but he also suffered a severe backlash. Afterwards, his cultivation didn't make any further progress. Because of his lingering injuries, no matter how deep the Zhang family's background was, they still weren't able to save his life. Now he was on the verge of death. Zhang Mo's face was wet with tears. She turned and bowed. "Big brother Qin, Mo is young and ignorant. I have offended you, but please don't lower yourself to my level. Please help me ask the Grandmaster. As long as he grants me a top-grade foundation establishment pill, I will agree to any condition." Zhang Qingming painfully closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were calm. Mo, shut up. He cupped his hands together towards the courtyard. "This little girl has been rude and has shown Grandmaster a joke. I will bring her away." Zhang Mo stiffly stood up and followed behind him. She seemed as if she had lost her soul, without the slightest bit of her usual demeanor. Qin Yu coughed. "You want a foundation establishment pill,